Chapter 503. One could imagine how tempting it was for a fairy as pure as ice like LV Qinghan to make such a gesture. Yi Guqin was very indifferent. From the beginning to the end, his mind was calm. Because of the mask on his face, LV Qinghan could not see Yi Guqin's face. She did not know what kind of expression he would have. But sensing that Yi Guqin's breathing did not change in the slightest, LV Qinghan knew that the person in front of her did not care about her body. After taking off her clothes, LV Qinghan's delicate face was crimson, and even her skin was covered with a layer of pink. LV Qinghan was forced to do this in front of the barbarian tribe's holy son. Yi Guqin did not care much, and directly activated the power of the azure dragon totem in his body. A rich green light far stronger than before spread out from Yi Guqin's palm. He began to treat LV Qinghan completely. During the process, LV Qinghan kept her eyes closed, but her trembling eyelashes showed the panic in her heart. But from the beginning to the end, Yi Guqin did not do anything else besides treating the poison. This healing process lasted for half a day. After half a day, Yi Guqin stopped and sat on the ground, panting slightly. Using the power of the totem like this was still a great burden for Yi Guqin. Moreover, using the power of the totem to clear the meridians, one careless mistake could cause damage to the meridians. So in this half a day, Yi Guqin's mind was highly concentrated, and his soul power was greatly consumed. LV Qinghan changed into her white dress, and seemed to feel Yi Guqin's exhaustion. Her face showed a complicated and grateful expression. "Thank you very much." LV Qinghan's tone was very sincere, and there was no more grudge from before. She now knew that the person in front of her was sincerely treating her poison, and not taking advantage of her. LV Qinghan felt her cheeks burning when she thought of how she had measured the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. She began to reflect on herself, and wondered if there was really something wrong with her temperament. "It's fine," Yi Guqin said lightly. He helped LV Qinghan because of Zither Fairy's face. He didn't have a good impression of LV Qinghan. Feeling the alienation and indifference in Yi Guqin's words, LV Qinghan's face showed a trace of embarrassment, but there was also a trace of shame and anger in her heart. No matter what, the person in front of her had seen her body. Could it be that she didn't feel anything at all? Or was his charm too weak? No matter how cold LV Qinghan was, she was still a woman. Sometimes, she would care about such details. Your meridians have just healed, so it's difficult for you to use your real qi for the time being. You should recuperate here for a period of time. Yi Guqin finished speaking, and was about to leave. "Wait," LV Qinghan suddenly shouted. Yi Guqin stopped in his tracks. "Who are you? Can I see your face?" LV Qinghan asked in a complicated tone. After all, the person in front of her was the first man who had seen her body. And she didn't even know what he looked like. "You don't want to know," Yi Guqin said. With a flap of his fiery wings, he soared into the sky. What he said was indeed the truth. If LV Qinghan knew that the person who saved her was Yi Guqin, whom she had belittled and prejudiced against, her feelings would be very complicated. "Why did you say that? Who are you?" LV Qinghan looked at the figure in the distance with mixed feelings. She sighed slightly, calmed down, and began to recuperate. This time, she was seriously injured. Although all the poisonous fog had been removed, it would be difficult for her to fully recover without half a month of recuperation. Fortunately, the bottom of the valley was very safe. LV Qinghan could rest peacefully. Yi Guqin left the valley and flapped his wings. "Little Yi, your methods have really impressed me. Even that cold and arrogant woman is willing to lower her head and undress herself." The divine condor blinked its eyes, its admiration for Yi Futian was like a torrential river, endless. "Brother Condor, you must be joking," Yi Guqin said indifferently. He didn't mean to treat LV Qinghan like this. Because of his personality, he didn't like people who helped her. Wasn't he a masochist who took the initiative to help her and was looked down upon? Yi Guqin didn't have this kind of fetish. "What do you do next?" the divine condor asked. Awaken the remaining white tiger and black tortoise totems. Yi Guqin's goal was clear. The white tiger was of the metal element and had strong killing power. If it was awakened, it would be of great help to Yi Guqin's strength. The metal sword will was also known for its sharpness and killing power. The black tortoise was of the earth element. It was as still as the earth and had strong defense. The white tiger and the black tortoise, one focused on offense and the other on defense. Both would greatly improve Yi Guqin's strength. Therefore, Yi Guqin wanted to awaken the two ancestral totems. Then he would gather the 5 elemental totems and try to comprehend the supreme 5 elemental sword will. While Yi Guqin was looking for the divine items to awaken the white tiger and the black tortoise. The news of LV Qinghan's death also began to spread in the barren ancient forbidden zone. What? Goddess LV is dead? How is this possible? Goddess LV is a top genius of the Consonance Palace. Her strength is extraordinary. Who has the ability to kill her? I heard that it was the blood-armored figure in the valley that day. Zhou Tong said it himself. He was also badly injured. TSK, that blood-armored figure helped Sword Sect Ta Lin. I thought he was a good person. But now he killed Goddess LV. This is unforgivable. In the barren ancient forbidden zone, the geniuses of the major forces were furious. LV Qinghan had a good reputation. Coupled with her beautiful face and cold temperament, she was quite popular in the Saint Origin dynasty. Such a beautiful fairy was killed. How could this group of geniuses not be angry? Somewhere in the barren ancient forbidden zone, Zhou Tong said with an apologetic face, I'm sorry. I didn't take good care of senior sister LV. That's why that person succeeded. In front of him stood a group of geniuses of the Consonance Palace. Zither Fairy and Rentingting were among them. Senior sister LV is really dead? Zither Fairy couldn't believe it. She covered her mouth with her hand and tears fell from her eyes. Although she hated LV Qinghan for matchmaking her and Zhou Tong. But in the Consonance Palace, LV Qinghan was the person who treated her the best. Zither Fairy was very close to LV Qinghan and relied on her. But such a senior sister had died in the hands of the blood-armored figure. How could this be? Why did that person do this? Zither Fairy's tears fell. Hatred could be seen in her eyes. Seeing this, Zhou Tong's eyes flashed. Immediately, his body trembled slightly. His face turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. What happened to you? Zither Fairy was slightly pale. Rentingting also came forward to show her concern. I'm fine. I wanted to save senior sister LV. But I had a short fight with the blood-armored figure and I was injured. Zhou Tong's expression was very appropriate. How could the group of geniuses of the Consonance Palace understand? Even Zither Fairy had a trace of apology in her beautiful eyes. She took out a healing pill and handed it to Zhou Tong. I'm sorry, Mr. Zhou. I was biased against you before. However, I will definitely avenge senior sister Lu. Of course. I will do my best with junior sister Zither. Zhou Tong said seriously. But deep in his eyes, there was a hint of pride. In the end, Zither Fairy would fall into his hands. Chapter 504. As time passed, the geniuses of the 7 factions and the barbarian race had finally entered the inner region of the Forbidden Zone. In the deepest part of the Forbidden Zone, the ground was desolate, as if it was an ancient battlefield. At the same time, there were some arenas in the deepest part of the Forbidden Zone that were filled with cracks, as if they had been through the baptism of time. Is this the location of the final battle between the 2 factions? Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling, and the others led the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest to this place. Not only the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, but the other factions also gathered here. Not long after, the Limitless Sword Sect's group arrived with Xian Hao as their leader. Although Xian Hao had lost to Yi Guqin in the exchange, he had not lost his life. Instead, he had learned from the painful experience, and his strength had improved again. In the Forbidden Zone, he had defeated all the saints and made a name for himself. As for Xian Feng, Xian Dai, and the others, they glanced at Yan Wushuang and the others coldly. That day in the valley, they had been taught a lesson by the blood-armored figure, and their faces were swollen. It could be said that they had lost a lot of face. In addition, Murong Ditian was also here. He had also relied on a fortuitous encounter to cultivate the 9 transformations of divine soul, and his strength was not weak. Soon after, the 3 imperial palaces also arrived under the lead of the young war emperor, Yang Haozang. The young war emperor had also made a name for himself in the Forbidden Zone, and was the nightmare of many barbarian race saints. However, the young war emperor's face was not looking good. Because LV Qinghan was his partner, but she had died in the hands of the blood-armored figure. This made the young war emperor furious. If you dare to appear here, I will definitely kill you under the conqueror halberd. The young war emperor's eyes were filled with disdain, shooting out a cold light. Zhou Tong was not with the 3 imperial palaces, but with the other girls of the Consonance Palace. Zither Fairy's mood was still low, and Zhou Tong would occasionally console her. He was not in a hurry, as he was afraid that he would cause Zither Fairy's vigilance and disgust. Since he would not lose the opportunity, Zhou Tong was willing to wait. Once I obtain the will of life and death, I will become a life and death chamber expert and trample Yi Guqin under my feet. Zither Fairy will also be moved by my sincerity and fall in love with me. In the end, everything will belong to me, Zhou Tong. Zhou Tong had a faint smile on his face, but his heart was in high spirits. After that, the geniuses of the 9 Profound Sect, Sealed Saber King Palace, Saint Origin Academy, and other forces also arrived. Not long after the 7 great forces arrived, many holy sons and holy daughters of the barbarian race also arrived. The Golden Clan's Triple Crown King, the Golden Sun Saint Sun, and Jean Zhanglie. She was the saintess of the Wood Clan, the Wooden Bell Spirit. The Water Clan's Dragoness had also arrived. There were also Yan Xuanji and the others from the Fire Clan, as well as the Earth Clan's Holy Sun. Lei Jiuyo, the Lightning Clan's Holy Sun, and Feng Clan's Triple Crown King, Feng Xiaotian, had also arrived. The desolate ancient arena could be said to be a gathering of heroes, and the atmosphere was solemn. On the water's side, Dragon Lady's blue eyes looked in the direction of the 7 factions, but she did not see Yi Guqin. Where did he go? Why didn't he appear? Dragon Lady could be said to be the only one who knew that Yi Guqin had the primogenitor totem. However, she naturally would not spread the news. Her gaze abruptly turned to another direction, where a beautiful young lady in a colorful robe stood. She was filled with an exotic charm. It was Mu Lanyue. Because she had never fought in the desolate ancient Forbidden Zone, not many people from the 7 great forces knew about her. However, regardless of cultivation base, her identity was not weaker than the Quadruple Crown King, Tuoba Shang. They were both geniuses of the barbarian family. If I want to end the war, I will need to rely on the Mu Lanyue's power. Let's see if it's possible to contact her through Yi Guqin, Dragon Lady thought to herself. The barbarian race was divided into 2 camps. The Gold Clan, Fire Clan, Thunder Clan, and other clans led by the Tuoba family were in the camp of war. The Water Clan, Wood Clan, and other clans led by the Mu Lanyue were in the camp of peace. However, Dragon Lady wanted to observe for a while longer, so she did not rashly reveal Yi Guqin's information to Mu Lanyue. The atmosphere around the desolate ancient fighting ring was cold and solemn. A storm was brewing. Barbarians, since you have come this far, let's fight. Xian Hao was the first to step out. His voice was cold and his hair fluttered in the wind. With 2 swords in his hands, he looked quite imposing. Let's see who among the barbarian race dares to fight against me. The young war emperor stepped out with a cold and domineering gaze. Geniuses from all the great forces stepped out. Only the Sword Sect's Tower Forest did not. When Yan Wushuang stepped out, the people from the other 6 great forces looked at her strangely. I wonder where Sword Sect Yi is at this critical moment. Zhou Tong suddenly asked, seemingly puzzled. However, many people knew that Zhou Tong was asking the obvious. Because after killing Lei Jiuming and the others, Yi Guqin seemed to have evaporated in the desolate ancient forbidden zone. There was no news about him since then. Even when the inner sect was besieged in the valley, Yi Guqin did not appear. I think Yi Guqin should be hiding in fear. Queen Yuan, she sneered. Sigh, such a cowardly person can bear the title of sword sect master. How ridiculous. Ren Tingting sneered. The eyes of the people from the other forces flickered. At such a critical moment, Yi Guqin, who was an important combat force, did not appear. It was indeed a little unreasonable. On the inner sect's side, Yan Wushuang's face froze, but she could not refute. They could not contact Yi Guqin now. Some of the inner sect disciples felt insulted and clenched their fists tightly. If senior brother Yi is here, there will be no room for you to talk. Some of the inner sect disciples were unwilling, but there was nothing they could do. The momentum of the entire inner sect seemed to have been suppressed by the other forces. At this moment, Lei Jiuyo snorted and said, "It seems that sword sect is destined to be a coward." Lei Jiuyo had always wanted to avenge Lei Jiuming, but he had never met Yi Guqin. He also did not know that the blood-armored figure who had the ancestor totem and had forced them to retreat was the target he wanted to take revenge on. Bullshit. Someone in the inner sect cursed. However, Lei Jiuyo and the others just looked on coldly. Don't talk nonsense, let's fight. Xian Hao directly stepped onto a desolate arena. On the other side, Jin Zhanglie, the chosen of the Jin clan, also stepped onto the arena. Just as the two stepped onto the ancient arena, the desolate land seemed to have sensed something and began to rumble and shake. There were formation runes spreading on the ground. At the same time, on the periphery of the ancient desolate forbidden zone, a formation spread out in a desolate land. As the light spread out, the entire scene within the desolate ancient arena was projected here. Many people had already gathered there. Whether it was the divine dwelling experts and elders of the seven forces, or the patriarch and elders of the barbarian race, they were all gathered there. They knew that there was an incomplete formation here that could resonate with the formation in the ancient arena and transmit images. It's Xian Hao of the Limitless Sword Sect, someone from the seven forces said. Xian Tai's face was calm. Although he only had one arm left, he still had the bearing of a divine dwelling expert. On the other side, Feng Manlu and the others in the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest received strange looks from many people. After all, the famous Sword Sect Pagoda Forest had never been to the ancient arena. On the ancient arena, the battle between the two camps was about to begin. Somewhere in the ancient desolate forbidden zone, Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on an altar. His aura surged, and sword chi soared into the sky. A sharp light that seemed to be able to break everything in the world gushed out from his body. The golden white tiger totem had awakened. Chapter 505. On the altar, Yi Guqin's black hair fluttered without wind. He was surrounded by an extremely sharp metal element aura. It was a peerless sharpness that seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth. Roar! An illusory white tiger spirit rose from Yi Guqin's body. Its entire body was silver white, as if it was made of gilt. The tiger's roar shook the forest and swept out in all directions. Yi Guqin immediately took out the bloody hell sword. With the support of the metal-based totem power, the bloody hell sword was even sharper. Whoosh! He did not use any sword moves. He simply swung his sword, and a wave of metal sword chi that could destroy heaven and earth swept out. It directly plowed a terrifying 3 feet deep mark on the ground. What a sharp sword chi! Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. As he expected, the white tiger totem's sharpness greatly increased the power of his sword moves. This was only one of the white tiger totem's abilities. Next, it's time to awaken the last black tortoise totem. If the 5-colored golden core is completely awakened, what kind of power will it have? Yi Guqin was curious. Although he was not far from the barren ancient arena, he did not go there immediately. Yiguchen would only go there after the 5 primogenitor totems were completely awakened. Without hesitation, he began to sense the earth-based divine objects alter through the 5-colored golden core. A great battle began in the barren ancient arena. Xian Hao fought against Jin Lizhan. One side was surging with sword qi, while the other side's totem power shook the heavens. Both were not weak. However, those with discerning eyes could see that Xian Hao had the upper hand. After all, Jin Lizhan was not a double or triple crown champion. Xian Hao was the top genius of the 7 forces. Therefore, it did not take long for Xian Hao to blast Jin Lizhan out of the arena with his ultimate sword technique. Humph! Jin Liashan's face was a little ugly. He did not expect to lose the first battle. Xian Hao's face was calm and his eyes were calm. He stood in the arena and was in the limelight. If Senior Yi was here, how would he have the opportunity to be in the limelight? Some of the disciples from the inner academy spoke in a somewhat sour manner when they saw this. Recalling the scene of Yiguchen defeating Xian Hao at the exchange back then, it made one's blood boil. But now, it was Xian Hao who was in the limelight, and everyone in the inner court was naturally displeased in their hearts. At the periphery of the ancient desolate forbidden zone, the people from the 2 camps who were watching through the projection of the array formation were also in an uproar. Xian Hao is indeed the top genius of the Sun Moon Hall. Neither arrogant in victory nor discouraged in defeat. Xian Tai nodded in satisfaction. At the same time, he glanced at Feng Manlu with hatred in his eyes. Feng Manlu looked at the projection indifferently and did not say anything. As for the barbarian race, the leader of the Jin race did not look too good. After all, the holy son of their race had been defeated. Fortunately, the Golden Sun Saint Sun and the others did not make a move. After Xian Hao defeated Jin Lizhan, a godly glow suddenly appeared on the desolation ancient arena. The godly glow slowly dissipated, and a quasi-sage medicine was revealed. Just as the rumors say, one can obtain the recognition of the ancient desolate ring. The geniuses of the 7 major forces and the barbarian race were pleasantly surprised when they saw this. They had come to the ancient desolate forbidden zone partly for the competition between the 2 camps. On the other hand, they had selfish motives. They wanted to obtain the rewards in the ancient desolate ring. But why is it a quasi-sage medicine and not the life and death intent? Some geniuses frowned. Although quasi-sage medicine was also rare and precious, it could not be compared to the life and death intent. After all, the life and death intent was a treasure that could allow one to break through to the life and death threshold. For these geniuses, it was the most important thing. Is it because the battle is not intense enough? Some people guessed. Although the battle between Xian Hao and Jin Lizhan was intense, it was far from the peak, and Xian Hao's strength was not fully unleashed. The more intense the battle was, the greater the rewards. Many people had the same guess. Then, the battle between the 2 camps began. There was more than one ancient desolate ring, so some battles began at the same time. The young war emperor went up the ring and looked down at one side. Xian Hao swept out with his sword and occupied one of the seats. In addition, Yan Wushuang and the others also joined the battle. But the most shocking one was Zhou Tong. Although Zhou Tong was one of the 3 young war emperors like Yang Haozang, he rarely fought. In terms of battle strength, he was not as famous as the young war emperor. Therefore, he did not attract much attention in the past. But now, Zhou Tong finally joined the battle. His strength was at the peak of the 9 transformations divine soul realm. He was extremely powerful. As soon as he went up the ring, he defeated a powerful barbarian tribe saint. Young Master Zhou is too powerful. Ren Tingting's eyes were sparkling. In comparison, Yiguchen, who had never appeared, was even more controversial. Zhou Tong's lips curled into a faint smile. His goal was naturally the life and death intent. Seeing that the battle was about to begin again, the experts from both camps outside the ancient desolate forbidden zone were also watching intently. After all, this battle was extremely important. However, as time passed, Many experts from the 7 major forces began to frown. Because the barbarian tribe's victory rate was increasing. The Earth Black Tortoise Totem had awakened. At this moment, the 5 elements gathered and the golden core was awakened. Yiguchen could feel a terrifying 5 elements energy that seemed to want to break out of his body and change the heavens and the earth. The legend of the barbarian race, the 5-crown king, had descended once again. Chapter 506. On the altar, Yiguchen's body was surrounded by a 5-colored brilliance. It was sacred and transcendent. The sharp power of the metal element could cut through heaven and earth. The power of the wood element could revive all living things. The power of the water element surged in all directions. The explosive power of the fire element could burn the heavens. The defensive power of the earth element could not be moved. The 5 ancestral totems all gathered on Yiguchen's body. Suddenly, a cracking sound came from Yiguchen's body. It was the sound of the 5-colored golden core in Yiguchen's dantian shattering. As the 5-colored golden core shattered, the power of the 5 ancestral totems also completely merged with Yiguchen's body. The totem power before was only temporarily controlled by Yiguchen due to the effects of the 5-colored golden core. But now, when the 5-colored golden core shattered, the power of the 5 elemental totems was completely refined and controlled by Yiguchen. In other words, Yiguchen had completely merged the power of the 5 elemental totems into his body. There was no longer any distinction between them. He was the 5-crown king. He was the 5-crown king. The moment the 5-colored golden core shattered, a surge of power also surged into Yiguchen's body. His cultivation aura also broke through again, reaching the 8th transformation of the godly soul realm. At the same time, a surge of obscure energy and information was transmitted from the shattered 5-colored golden core to Yiguchen's mind. This is. Yiguchen's mind faintly heard a vast and boundless voice. The bloodline of the barbarian tribe comes from the ancient god tribe. The ancient god tribe is the strongest tribe in the universe. They control the 5 elements, control lightning, control wind and rain, and control all living things. Cultivating the ancient god art, achieve the body of an ancient god, from 1 star to 9 stars. A 9-star ancient god, the body of a saint, can shatter stars with a single hand and trample on the universe. Yiguchen's mind shook violently. Countless images flashed past like a lantern. That was a wild and desolate land, yet there was a group of giants that could control the nature of all living things. They could shake the heavens with a single step and shake the earth with a single roar. Even with Yiguchen's calm temperament, it was hard for him to hide his surprise. He did not expect the origin of the barbarian tribe's bloodline to be the mysterious and powerful ancient god clan. Now that he thought about it, wasn't the 5 elements barbarian tribe, including the wind tribe, the thunder tribe, and the others, controlling the force of nature exactly the same as the ancient gods? The only difference was that the ancient gods could control all the forces of nature, while the barbarians could only control one type of power. The double crown monarchs and triple crown monarchs, on the other hand, were atavistic bloodlines that were produced by chance. They were able to control different types of power. And 5-crown king should have the densest atavistic bloodline, which was why he could control 5 different types of power. The voice in my head, if I'm not mistaken, should be the legendary 5-crown king of the barbarian tribe. Unfortunately, he fell in the bottomless devil abyss. Yiguchen finally understood. To a certain extent, he was the successor of 5-crown king. But I did not expect to be able to peek into the secrets of the ancient gods. In this 5-colored golden core, there is a cultivation technique like the ancient god technique. Yiguchen closed his eyes and carefully experienced it. He had already mastered the impeccable body of Vajra. And the purple gold immortal body was still a little far away from him. It could be said that Yiguchen's cultivation of the physical body had reached a bottleneck. But at this juncture, Yiguchen had obtained the cultivation technique of the ancient god clan, the ancient god technique. After experiencing it once, Yiguchen opened his eyes. There was a hint of regret in his eyes. This ancient god technique is incomplete. It can only be cultivated to the level of a 3-star ancient god, Yiguchen thought to himself. But he was relieved. The ancient god clan was so powerful. Even someone as talented as 5-Crown King would not have been able to comprehend the complete 9-star ancient god technique. To be able to comprehend the 3-star ancient god technique was already proof of 5-Crown King's talent. 5-Crown King stored the secrets of the ancient gods and the ancient god technique in the 5-colored golden core. If one could not awaken the 5 ancestral totems, they would not be able to obtain it. 5-Crown King put in a lot of effort. Yiguchen could not help but sigh. 5-Crown King must have been unwilling to let the secrets of the ancient gods and the ancient god technique be buried before he died. That was why he came up with this idea. Only by completely awakening the 5 ancestral totems could one obtain the cultivation technique of the ancient god technique. But it's a pity that the power of the 5 elements in my body is not enough to remove the blood-dissolving demon poison. I will first peek into the secrets of the ancient god technique before going to the desolate ancient arena to obtain the 5 elements sacred fruit. Yiguchen made up his mind and started to comprehend the ancient god technique. Yiguchen was looking forward to it. If his impeccable body of Vajra was combined with the ancient god body, how powerful would he be? He would probably not need to rely on any external force or secret technique to face the hidden latch of life and death. Just as Yiguchen was comprehending the ancient god technique, a storm was brewing in the desolate ancient arena. With the arrival of Guzun, an extremely austere aura filled the area. Guzun looked extremely ordinary. His hair was like a bird's nest and his body was covered in stains. His clothes were tattered and he emitted a stench. If one didn't know him, they wouldn't be able to connect him to the first on the heavenly saber ranking of the saber-sealing monarch palace. But no one dared to look down on this beggar-like youth. How could someone who could be accepted as a disciple by Imperial Saber Yubufan be ordinary? And saber maniac Guzun was even more famous than Yiguchen in the barbarian race. After all, Guzun had killed too many barbarian race saints. With Guzun's arrival, the grievances of the disciples of the 7 major forces were released. Guzun stepped onto the desolate ancient arena and faced Yan Xuanji. "Can you take one of my attacks?" Guzun murmured with an empty gaze. He always seemed to be in a daze and gave others the feeling that he was in a daze. No wonder he was called Saber Maniac. "Humph, Guzun, although you are strong, I'm not weak either." Although Yan Xuanji was wary of Guzun, he wouldn't show any weakness. After all, he was the Fire Tribe's double-crown king. He wasn't afraid even when facing Xian Hao and the Little War Emperor. Although Guzun gave him great pressure, it wasn't enough to make him run away. "All right." Guzun's voice was hoarse as he slowly raised the rusty ancient saber in his hand. This saber was the 7 slaughter ancient saber that even the palace lord couldn't draw out in the saber monarch ancient cave. At this moment, all the sky prides in the desolate ancient arena, including the experts of the 7 major forces and the barbarian race, were paying close attention. Guzun swung his saber. The whistling wind seemed to have stopped. The world went silent. No one in the surroundings of the ancient desolate stage felt anything. However, Yan Xuanji, who was on the stage, had a drastic change in expression. Without the slightest hesitation, he summoned his 2 supreme totems. At the same time, he used all his trump cards and ultimate moves. An extremely powerful totem energy that could make a top sky pride vomit blood charged towards Guzun. However, it didn't work. It was as if nothing could stop that saber. The saber drew a line of blood in the air. Guzun's figure had appeared behind Yan Xuanji. Yan Xuanji's figure suddenly stopped as if he was frozen. All the sky prides held their breaths as they looked at the scene in confusion. Yan Xuanji choked as he spoke with difficulty. "What's the name of this move?" Guzun was still in a daze as he murmured. "One saber flow, one saber azura, puchi." Yan Xuanji's body was split into 2 from the top of his head down. One slash. Yan Xuanji was instantly killed. The entire arena was in an uproar as everyone's eyes almost popped out. Chapter 507. What did they just see? Yan Xuanji, the double-crowned king of the fire tribe, was cut in half from the middle like a piece of tofu. Blood splattered all over the sky. Everyone present, whether it was the geniuses of the 7 major forces or the barbarian tribe's saint, gasped. Strong. Too strong. Everyone's eyes were filled with extreme shock, as if they had seen the most incredible thing. They knew that Gu Zun was powerful and had expected this battle. Gu Zun should win. But in their imagination, even if Yan Xuanji couldn't defeat Gu Zun, he could at least contend with him. If he couldn't, he could even escape the arena. But no, it was just a matter of one slash. Yan Xuanji didn't even have the chance to escape before he was cut in half by Gu Zun. Gu Zun is so strong. Many geniuses' voices were dry. They had heard of Gu Zun's name as the #1 on the heavenly saber list. But after all, they had never seen Gu Zun in action with their own eyes. It was hard to believe based on hearsay. But now, all of his doubts had vanished into thin air with this saber strike. Gu Zun lived up to his name as the saber fanatic. He lived up to Yu Bufan's words. He was the #1 saber Dao among the younger generation of the Saint Origin dynasty. The disciples of the sword sect, Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, Yi Xia, and the others were all shocked. Gu Zun's strength was far beyond their expectations. But they didn't forget that Yi Guqin would fight Gu Zun at the top of the Forbidden City in the future. A thought that they didn't want to think about arose spontaneously in the hearts of the inner court disciples. Could the sword sect defeat the saber fanatic? Originally, the inner court disciples had absolute confidence in Yi Guqin. But now, after seeing Gu Zun's slash, they hesitated. Not only were the people in the desolate ancient arena shocked. Outside the desolate ancient Forbidden City, the higher-ups of the 7 major forces and the barbarian tribe were in an uproar. Yan Xuanji. The patriarch of the fire tribe's expression changed dramatically. Seeing his own genius, the double-crowned king, killed in one slash, the smile on his face disappeared. The smile on his face had long since disappeared and was replaced by an ashen expression as he clenched his fists tightly. Not only had he been defeated, but he had been defeated so miserably. The fire tribe's face lose all its face. The people of the 7 major forces were relieved. With Gu Zun's help, the pressure on the 7 forces suddenly lessened. On the other hand, the barbarian race was shrouded in dark clouds. Yu Bufan nodded in satisfaction. This disciple did not disappoint him. Gu Zun's peerless blade, he should have comprehended at least 70% of it. He has already far surpassed me. Yu Bufan praised. Back then, at the Forbidden City, Yu Bufan had only comprehended 30% of the peerless blade, and it was enough to defeat Ping Feng Manlu. Of course, Feng Manlu had yet to comprehend the union of man and sword at that time. Even so, it was enough to prove the power of the peerless blade. The peerless saber was not only a move, but also a kind of artistic conception. Gu Zun's one slash Azura had been imbued with the concept of the peerless slash, which was why he could instantly kill Yan Xuanji. A new generation replacing the old. My disciple is now sweeping across the 4 directions. What about you, Feng Manlu? Although Yu Bufan's temperament was calm, it was hard for him to not compare himself with Feng Manlu. He looked at Feng Manlu. Feng Manlu looked calm, but his eyebrows were slightly knitted together. He'd learned of Gu Zun's performance through the mouths of others. To be honest, even Feng Manlu was a little surprised. Gu Zun's strength had indeed exceeded his expectations. Yu Bufan, you've taught a good disciple. Feng Manlu sighed. You're flattering me. He's just self-taught. But I'm looking forward to the battle at the Forbidden City. Yu Bufan smiled. Feng Manlu faintly nodded. How could he not know the pride in Yu Bufan's heart? Where was the sword sect when the saber addict was shining brightly? This was the same thought in everyone's mind. Inside the ancient desolate arena, Guzun stood alone with his blade. A ball of light suddenly appeared. When the light dissipated, a ball of pitch-black airflow appeared before everyone's eyes. It carried traces of nirvana chi. Life and death intent. Everyone was in an uproar, and their eyes were filled with envy. That was the life and death intent, which was extremely attractive to 9 transformation heavens chosen. If one could comprehend it, they could directly enter the life and death chamber. Even if it was just a small death chamber, it was enough to make people scramble for it. Wow, Guzun is already so strong. If he comprehended the life and death chamber and entered the life and death chamber, it would be amazing. Many people looked at Guzun with envy. The life and death intent was what they desired the most. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Guzun didn't even look at the life and death intent. He casually took it and threw it to Ling Ju. Even with Ling Ju's personality, he was dumbfounded. Not only him, but all the heavens chosen, including the barbarian race saint, were dumbfounded. Guzun didn't even want the life and death intent. Zhou Tong's eyes were red with envy. He couldn't wait to go up and fight for it. What's the point of breaking through without relying on one's life and death? Guzun muttered to himself. The life and death chamber was divided into 2 types, the small death chamber and the great death chamber. Those who relied on the life and death intent to break through would almost certainly only reach the small death chamber. And to reach the great death chamber, the first requirement was to rely on one's life and death crisis to comprehend the life and death chamber intent. Guzun was ambitious. How could he be willing to just reach the small death chamber? But in the eyes of others, it was a little too extravagant. Ling Ju was pleasantly surprised and didn't hold back. He had been trampled under Yi Guqin's foot before. Now that he obtained the life and death intent, he would definitely be able to reach the life and death chamber intent after comprehending it. At that time, he would be able to suppress Yi Guqin. Who's going to test the saber? Guzun held the 7-kill ancient saber and looked around indifferently. Many barbarian race saints were disappointed. Ordinary saints didn't have the courage to go up the stage. I'll do it. A dual crown king of the Earth race took a deep breath and went up the stage. The Earth race has the best defense in the barbarian race. Maybe Guzun won't be able to kill him in one strike, some heavens chosen whispered. This dual crown king of the Earth race indeed had that thought. He had a strong defense and believed that Guzun wouldn't be able to kill him in one strike. Guzun didn't say anything unnecessary and attacked with his saber. Whoosh! The saber cut through the void and released a shocking killing intent. Puchi! With the same attack, a head rolled and blood splattered. One strike forward, one strike back. I only have one strike. Who dares to block it? Guzun touched the saber and murmured. The words caused the entire desolate ancient arena to fall into a dead silence. Even Lei Jilyo, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian and the others frowned. The young war emperor, Xian Hao and the others were also a little wary of Guzun. Guzun and his saber had suppressed many barbarian race saints, making it hard for them to breathe. I'm afraid that after today, Saber Maniac's name will far surpass Yi Guqin's. Some heavens chosen looked at each other and whispered. Previously, Yi Guqin had swept through everyone in the exchange. Even Xian Hao had been defeated by him. Many people called Yi Guqin the #1 heavens chosen of the Saint Origin dynasty. But after what happened today, Saber Maniac's name would far surpass sword sects. Sigh. Just as the barbarian race was in a gloomy mood, a beautiful girl dressed in a colorful robe stepped onto the arena. She had an exotic air about her. It was Mulan Yue. At the same time, Yi Guqin, who was comprehending the ancient god technique, suddenly opened his eyes. In an instant, a terrifying burst of physical strength swept out like a storm. Yi Guqin couldn't help but let out a long roar that shook the heavens. His body instantly grew taller and was covered with ancient light runes. It was as if the ancient god clan had descended to the mortal world. Chapter 508. Yiguchen's body suddenly expanded. However, it did not expand like a balloon. Instead, it grew evenly. However, it was not too exaggerated. It was just that his body had grown to 9 feet. It was not like a real ancient god, who had the sun, moon, and stars above his head and the earth beneath his feet. At the same time, ancient light patterns appeared on the surface of Yiguchen's body. The light patterns almost spread to Yiguchen's entire body, giving him an ancient and sacred aura. He was like an ancient god that was worshipped by people. These light patterns were the ancient god clan's runes and had ancient mysterious power. However, with Yiguchen's current ability, he was unable to tap into the power within. A faint star mark appeared between Yiguchen's eyebrows. It was the mark of a one-star ancient god. However, the mark was faint and it was obvious that it was not fully formed. Is this the power of an ancient god? Yiguchen stretched out his arm, grasped the void, and punched out. With a swoosh, an ear-piercing sonic boom was heard. He punched the ground. Instantly, the area within a 10-mile radius trembled. Countless cracks appeared on the ground and gravel flew everywhere. I feel that my physical strength has increased by more than 3 times, Yiguchen sighed in his heart. This was an extremely shocking enhancement that was even more powerful than the enhancement of some of the top physical body secret techniques. Moreover, this was before Yiguchen became a one-star ancient god. Currently, his ancient god tactic could only be considered a beginner. He was not even a one-star ancient god tactic. At most, he was a half-star ancient god. The cultivation of the ancient god tactic is not that simple. I wonder if there is an opportunity in the 5 Elements Temple that can help me become a one-star ancient god, Yiguchen thought to himself. With a thought, his body returned to its original state. The light patterns on his body also disappeared and the star mark between his eyebrows also faded. It's about time. Let's head to the ancient desolation arena. The cultivation of the ancient god tactic was not something that could be done in a day. It could not be rushed. Hence, Yiguchen headed directly to the ancient desolation arena. The fire wings on his back flapped, and he soared into the air. He was still wearing the heavenly demon general armor. The heavenly demon general armor fit his body perfectly. Hence, even if Yiguchen activated the ancient god tactic and transformed into his ancient god form, he would not be exposed. Yiguchen thought to himself as he walked towards the desolate ancient arena. He was now a half-star ancient god, and after transforming into his ancient god form, coupled with the heavenly demon general armor and the blood prison sword, he should be able to contend with the experts of the small hidden gate. If he really became a one-star ancient god in the future, he would be able to contend against the hidden latch of life and death without relying on any external force after using his ancient god form. Just as Yiguchen was rushing towards the desolate ancient arena. On the desolate ancient arena, Mulanua slowly stepped onto the stage and confronted Guzun. Although the Mulan family was a pacifist, Mulanyu couldn't just stand by and watch Guzun slaughter the barbarian race's holy son, so she could only step forward. Who is that girl? Why have I never seen her fight before? Yeah, I don't think she's that famous. Many of the sky prides of the 7 major forces were puzzled. On the other hand, many saints of the barbarian race had a glint in their eyes. Mulanua is finally fighting. She's the barbarian race's holy daughter, and her strength is second only to Tuo Bashang. Many of the barbarian race's holy sons were excited. Guzun, how about we stop today? Mulanua looked at Guzun and asked with a frown. She could feel Guzun's strength. If you don't want to fight, then get down, Guzun said. He didn't have the slightest intention of showing mercy. Women were no different from rocks in his eyes. Mulanua gritted her teeth and said, then I'll offend you. After saying that, Mulanua didn't dare to underestimate her opponent and directly summoned her 3 supreme totems. Blue-eyed Blue Wan, 9-feathered Fire Phoenix, and Icicle Frost Phoenix. They were the 3 supreme totems of wind, fire, and water. Phoenix dance shatters the sky. Mulanue released the power of the 3 supreme totems, which was far more vigorous than the double crown champion's totem power. This fluctuation was extremely shocking. So powerful. Who is this girl? I've never heard of her before. Many of the sky prides of the 7 major forces were surprised. The barbarian race was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. They had never heard of this girl before. The barbarian race was overjoyed. As expected of the Saintess of Mulan City, second only to Tuoba Shang. She won't lose this time. Gu Zun looked at Mulanue with a strange look in his eyes for the first time. But that was it. Interesting. Gu Zun also attacked with his saber. The saber buzzed and the void seemed to be filled with the sound of metal vibrating. One saber stream, one saber world. Gu Zun's saber was different from the saber Shura. The power of the saber was vast, like an ancient mountain pressing down, as if it could destroy the sky with one strike. Boom! Terrifying fluctuations swept out in all directions, and powerful saber chi and totem power exploded. In the smoke and dust, the girl's muffled groan sounded. The barbarian race's saints instantly became alert. Could it be that even the Triple Crown champion, the Saintess of Mulan City, was killed in one strike? Lei Jiuyo and the others also stopped and didn't fight with Xian Hao and the others. They just looked at the arena. After the smoke and dust dissipated, Mulanue's delicate body retreated to the edge of the arena, and a trace of blood snaked down from the corner of her mouth. The barbarian race people saw this and breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that she wasn't killed in one strike. But in the next moment, they were horrified. Mulanue was a Triple Crown champion. The fact that Gu Zun could injure Mulanue with one strike proved how powerful he was. On the other hand, Gu Zun also took a few steps back, but he didn't suffer any injuries. He's too strong. What kind of monster is he? Looking at Gu Zun, who was almost uninjured, the barbarian race's saints and saintesses' eyes almost popped out. Everyone present, whether it was the barbarian race or the 7 great forces, had a heavy heart. Even some of the 7 great forces' geniuses didn't feel too happy. After all, Gu Zun was also an insurmountable mountain above their heads. If Gu Zun advances further, he'll probably be able to compete with the South Horizon region's geniuses, right? Some geniuses sighed. I thought that this battle would be over if the sword sect didn't come, but now, there's no need for the sword sect at all. Saber fanatic alone is enough. Many geniuses sighed. Yan Wushuang and the others' faces turned ugly. Looking down on Yiguchen was the same as looking down on the sword sect's talon. It made them lose face. You're not bad to be able to survive one strike of mine. Gu Zun was slightly interested and prepared to strike again. Mulanue gritted her teeth. Only she knew how great the pressure was when facing Gu Zun. But if she didn't fight, the barbarian race would suffer more casualties. But at this moment, an extremely domineering and arrogant voice suddenly sounded from afar. The voice was domineering even before the person arrived. Saber fanatic Gu Zun, is it? What's there to be afraid of? Let me, Tuoba Shang, experience it. A figure rushed over from afar like a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus. It was the quadruple crown champion, Tuoba Shang. The barren ancient arena was in an uproar again. There was going to be a good show to watch. Chapter 509. Not far away, Tuoba Shang's gray hair fluttered in the wind. His body was wrapped in chains and his feet were bare. With every step he took, the ground seemed to shake. It was as if a human-shaped dragon was trampling over. For Crown King, Tuoba Shang. With Tuoba Shang's arrival, the entire barbarian race was in an uproar. Tuoba Shang was a legend among the younger generation of the barbarian race. With 4 supreme totems, he could be said to be the most talented person besides the legendary 5 Crown King. Even the barbarian king of the 5 Elements Temple was willing to be Tuoba Shang's guardian. This showed how much the 5 Elements Temple valued Tuoba Shang. To a large extent, the barbarian race's invasion was because the Five Elements Temple was leaning towards the Tuoba family. The most important reason was naturally Tuoba Shang. There were even rumors that Tuoba Shang would become the real Five-Crown King in the future and lead the barbarian race to prosperity. Lord Tuoba is finally here. The eyes of the barbarian race's saintesses flashed. The barbarian race worshipped the strong, and the Four-Crown King was the most talented person among the younger generation. How could the barbarian race's saintesses not admire him? They wanted to become his concubines. The barbarian race's side outside the ancient desolate forbidden zone also heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Xun's appearance made the faces of the barbarian race's experts turn ugly. Tuoba Shang's appearance was undoubtedly a relief to them. The hearts of the people from the 7 superpowers were in their throats. Could Gu Xun deal with the Four-Crown King? At the ancient desolate ring, Tuoba Shang glanced at Mulanue coldly and said, "Step down. You will only embarrass the barbarian race." Mulanue's face turned ugly when she heard Tuoba Shang's words. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stepped down. Gu Xun looked on indifferently and did not care. He had come here to challenge the strong and hone his peerless saber. Although Mulanue's strength was not bad and she could contend with him, Gu Xun did not think too highly of her. Tuoba Shang was undoubtedly the best candidate to hone his blade. The moment Tuoba Shang stepped onto the battle stage, the entire desolate ancient battle stage seemed to tremble. Originally, there weren't many people among the 7 major forces that could interest me. I've heard that Sword Master had killed a life and death chamber with his own hands. I thought that I could compete with him, but it turns out that he's a coward. However, you've surprised me. Tuoba Shang said coldly. Many disciples of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest looked aggrieved. How many times had he mentioned the Sword Sect? On the stage, the battle between Gu Xun and Tuoba Shang was the most attention-grabbing battle of all. Battles had also begun in the other arenas, but most people's gazes were still fixed on the battle between the two. Gu Xun didn't waste any time and directly attacked with his saber. The blade sliced through the void, leaving behind a twisted line of blood. That line of blood seemed to be able to cut through everything. It was one blade Azura. Tuoba Shang also moved, not daring to underestimate Gu Xun. Gu Xun made him feel threatened. Black light surged on his hands, and 2 metal gauntlets appeared. Sharp metal spikes extended from the knuckles of Xiao Chen's gloves. With one punch, even an ordinary defensive divine weapon would have a few holes in it. 100 War Divine Fist. Tuoba Shang's aura erupted like a volcano, and terrifying totemic power poured out. The 4 supreme totems gave Tuoba Shang an extremely vigorous totemic power. The air in front of him seemed to be compressed, and a violent roar sounded. Just one punch was enough to seriously injure or even kill an ordinary Sky Pride. What a powerful fluctuation. The Sky Prides of the 7 major forces paled slightly. Tuoba Shang's aura wasn't any weaker than Gu Xun's. However, Gu Xun's aura was as sharp as a blade. On the other hand, Tuoba Shang's aura was incomparably vigorous and domineering. When the blade collided with the metal gauntlets, it was as if the sky was being torn apart. Transparent ripples spread out in all directions like a wild wave. Just the aftershock alone was enough to push an ordinary Sky Pride back. After the collision, both figures retreated at the same time. He caught it. On the barbarian race's side, many people cheered with joy in their eyes. The barbarian race Holy Sons were shocked by Gu Xun's strength when he killed with one strike. Even Mulanue was injured with one strike. Now, Tuoba Shang had finally appeared and blocked Gu Xun's attack without suffering any injuries. Good. The lazy look on Gu Xun's face faded slightly. It was replaced by a peerless sharpness in his eyes. It was the joy of meeting an opponent. The two didn't say anything as they attacked again. Gu Xun's blade cut through the void, and his blade chi was like a raging flame. Tuoba Shang's fist radiance was shocking, and it seemed like it could shake the 9 heavens. The two of them could be said to be the most powerful collision between a top sky pride of the Saint Origin dynasty and a top barbarian race saint. Boom! 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 The continuous collisions were incomparably eye-catching. Everyone was unable to take their eyes off the battle that was so hardy that they could not take their eyes off it. Only sword sects Ta Lin, Chu Qingqi, Ji Ling, and the others showed a trace of disappointment. The sword sect should have appeared in the final battle of the barren ancient arena. That person, who had swept away everyone in the social gathering and could even kill a life and death chamber expert by himself, should have appeared here and displayed his peerless brilliance. However, the person who should have appeared didn't. If senior brother Yi was here, how would he compare to these two? An inner court disciple clenched his fist and said unwillingly. The battle was in full swing. As the battle between Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang became more and more intense, balls of light appeared on the arena. Many treasures appeared in the light. There were quasi-saint medicines, mystical runes, divine weapons, and even the will of life and death. The surrounding sky pride's eyes were burning with passion. Indeed, only the most powerful battles would reveal the most precious treasures. However, Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang ignored them and focused on the battle. At a certain moment, another ball of light appeared, and an item vaguely appeared. It looked like a compass, but its surface was engraved with many ancient barbarian race words. Tuoba Shang's eyes flickered when he saw it. He stepped to the side and put the compass into his pouch. It was because of this that Gu Zun took the opportunity to push him back with a slash. Even with Tuoba Shang's strong physique, he still groaned in pain and suffered some injuries. Quadruple Crown King is injured. Many of the barbarians' faces changed. Tuoba Shang didn't hesitate to injure himself in order to obtain a treasure. Many people's eyes flickered, as they didn't know what the compass treasure was. You'll die if you get distracted while fighting me. Gu Zun's eyes were no longer dull, but sharp. To him, Tuoba Shang's action was an insult to him. Heh! Tuoba Shang didn't care, but there was a trace of arrogance in his eyes. All your lives are in my hands now. Tuoba Shang sneered in his heart. Chapter 5:10. The battle between Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang continued. Battles were also taking place in the other arenas. After seeing the life and death will appear in the battle between Gu Zun and the others. Whether it was the heaven prides of the seven great forces or the barbarian race's saints and saintesses, they all fought with all their strength to obtain the life and death will. Given Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang's vision, they didn't care about the life and death will and wanted to break through on their own. But the others didn't think so. Even if it was just a small threshold, it was possible to become a divine dwelling expert in the future. The only difference was that after breaking through from the great threshold to the divine dwelling stage, one would be stronger than ordinary divine dwelling experts. But in a place like the Saint Origin Empire, how many people really broke through to the divine dwelling stage with the aptitude of the great threshold? So these heaven prides didn't care at all, as long as they could break through the life and death threshold. Zhou Tong also fought with all his strength, fighting a powerful barbarian race saint to obtain the life and death will. Zither Fairy finally stepped onto the arena, and her opponent was a soul barbarian race saintess. The soul barbarian race saintess had a beautiful face, and her eyes were pitch black, revealing a trace of treachery. The soul barbarian race was known for their strange spirit attacks, and was very difficult to deal with. Zither Fairy, I didn't expect you to be willing to die, Ren Tingting said coldly under the arena. She had been beaten very miserably and had lost face. Seeing Zither Fairy fight now, she naturally didn't want Zither Fairy to be in the limelight. Zither Fairy ignored her and brought out her zither. TSK, you're too weak. The soul barbarian race saintess shook her head, a mocking look in her eyes. Zither Fairy ignored her and plucked the zither strings with her slender fingers. Powerful chi poured into the zither and spread out along with the zither music like waves. The soul barbarian race saintess also attacked, her totemic power surging. At the same time, an extremely powerful spirit power also gushed out from her sea of consciousness. The two fought fiercely. Zither Fairy's battle was inconspicuous compared to the other arenas where the battles were fierce. But it was also very dangerous. The sole barbarian race Saintess was extremely strong. Although she wasn't as strong as the 3 Crown Kings, she wasn't much weaker. On the other hand, Zither Fairy wasn't considered a top heaven pride among the 7 great forces. Under the support of the Zither barbarian race. After all, the Guqin was a gift from Yingning. However, as time passed, Zither Fairy found it increasingly difficult to deal with them. On the other hand, the sole barbarian Saintess did not kill her in one strike. Instead, she was toying with the Zither Fairy like a cat toying with a mouse. Zither Fairy clenched her teeth slightly and prepared to make a final gamble. Cuckoo cries blood. Zither Fairy opened her mouth, and a drop of her heart's essence blood fell onto the Zither strings. A row of transparent strings was dyed blood red by his heart's blood. The Zither Fairy plucked the strings of the Zither. The sound of the Zither was mournful and high-pitched, like a cuckoo crying blood, shaking one's mind. If it had been an ordinary saint or saintess, it might have been a little difficult to deal with. However, the sole barbarian Saintess revealed a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes suddenly went blank as an extremely terrifying wave of spiritual energy spread out, colliding with the sound of the Zither. After the attack, Zither Fairy's face was as pale as snow. Her delicate body retreated, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. This attack had severely injured Zither Fairy. The blood was like peach blossoms, dyeing Zither Fairy's pink dress red. It was rather tragic. Below the arena, Rentingting saw this scene. Not only did she not have the slightest bit of camaraderie, she shook her head and sneered, "Junior sister Zither, this is the result of overestimating yourself." She did not have the slightest bit of sympathy for Zither Fairy. Instead, she was happy to see this scene. Not far away, Zhou Tong was fighting a barbarian saint and had reached the most critical moment. However, from the corner of his eye, he saw Zither Fairy in a critical situation. A wisp of hesitation flashed across Zhou Tong's eyes. It was true that he liked Zither Fairy. A beauty was hard to come by. However, Zhou Tong's battle was at the critical moment, and he could not do anything else. If he retreated and turned to help Zither Fairy, then his efforts would be in vain. Zhou Tong was very confident that he could obtain the life and death intent in this battle. Therefore, giving up the battle was equivalent to giving up the life and death intent. However, the hesitation in Zhou Tong's eyes only lasted for a moment. The hero saving the beauty could increase Zither Fairy's impression of him, but how could it compare to breaking through the life and death threshold? Beauties are hard to come by, but there might be one in the future. If I lose this opportunity, I don't know when I will be able to break through the life and death threshold. Zhou Tong was a practical person and also very snobbish. He did not think for long and immediately made a decision. Ignoring Zither Fairy, who was in a critical situation, Zhou Tong was still fighting. On the other side, Zither Fairy's eyes were bleak. She also saw Zhou Tong from the corner of her eye. This person who had always pursued her was so unfamiliar at this critical moment. Zither Fairy's mouth revealed a bitter smile. She had never counted on Zhou Tong. A black-robed figure flashed across her mind again. At any critical moment, it seemed that this figure was always in front of her. Unfortunately, this time, nothing. How boring. The sole barbarian Saintess shook her head slightly. She was also tired of playing. At this moment, she directly attacked ruthlessly. She was ready to end Zither Fairy's life with a palm strike. Not far away, Rentingting's face revealed a trace of joy. Zither Fairy's hands were stained with blood. She placed her hands on the Zither strings, ready to fight to the death. At this moment, it was as if all the noise in the world had dissipated. Only an ear-piercing roar was left that traversed the sky. A figure shot over from the distant sky like a flaming meteor. Wherever it passed, even the clouds seemed to be scattered. "Is the sword sect here?" the paragons of the 7 factions exclaimed. That was because they knew that the sword sect also had a method to manifest wings. Is Senior Brother Yi here? The inner courtyard of the sword sect's forest of pagodas was boiling with excitement. Yan Wushuang, who was fighting in the arena, could not help but watch from the corner of her eye. That fellow is finally here. Swoosh! That figure flew directly towards the arena where Zither Fairy was. The Soul Barbarian Saintess was about to slap Zither Fairy with a palm strike. That figure smashed into the arena directly and then lashed out with a leg. The air compressed and burst forth, erupting with a terrifying air wave. Who is it? The Soul Barbarian Saintess shouted coldly. Her palm collided with the leg that lashed out. In the next moment, the mocking expression on the Soul Barbarian Saintess' face disappeared and was replaced by extreme horror. Crack! Without any hindrance, the kick shattered the Soul Barbarian Saintess' arm and landed on her delicate body. There was a loud explosion. Blood splattered. The Soul Barbarian Saintess exploded from the kick. Her delicate body shattered inch by inch. Blood, internal organs, and broken bones exploded all over the sky like a scarlet flower blooming. Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. Even Xian Hao, the Little War Emperor, Lei Jiuyo, the Golden Sun Saint, and the others who were fighting could not help but pause and look over with fear. A powerful holy maiden of the barbarian tribe exploded with a single kick. The visual impact was no less than when Gu Zun had killed Yan Xuanji with a single strike. Is it really the sword sect? Many people looked over. Even Zither Fairy's delicate body trembled as she focused her beautiful eyes in front of her. A blood-colored figure slowly appeared in the bloody mist that filled the sky. When she saw this figure, Zither Fairy's pupils suddenly shrank. The anticipation and apprehension on her jade-like face instantly turned into astonishment and hatred. Chapter 5:11. It was a figure that appeared from the blood mist. It wasn't the black-robed figure that Zither Fairy was expecting. Instead, it was a figure covered in ferocious blood-colored armor. It's the mysterious man in blood armor. Many people exclaimed. There were also some geniuses who had seen him in the valley before. Hence, they were also shocked. It's him. Everyone from Sword Sect Tower couldn't hide their surprise. However, what came next was a sense of loss. Even Yan Wushuang's beautiful eyes dimmed slightly. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. They thought that the peerless sword-like figure would appear. They didn't expect this figure to appear. However, Sword Sect Tower Lin was indebted to the blood-armored figure. Hence, Yan Wushuang and the others didn't have much of a reaction. However, they were puzzled. Why did the blood-armored figure come to the barren ancient arena? Was he going to intervene in the battle between the two camps? However, the blood-armored figure had two ancestor totems. If he joined the barbarian tribe, it would be a fatal crisis for the 7 major forces. However, compared to this, Yan Wushuang and the others were more concerned about the news that had spread a while ago. The blood-armored figure killed LV Qinghan. Yan Wushuang couldn't help but look at Zither Fairy. Everyone at the scene held their breaths and kept quiet. To be honest, they didn't know the identity and camp of the blood-armored figure. Which side does this blood-armored figure belong to? He has the ancestor totem, but he saved Sword Sect Tower Lin. Later on, he killed LV Qinghan. Now, he killed the saintess of the Soul Barbarian tribe. Many people were puzzled. However, at this moment, everyone's confusion and shock could not be compared to Zither Fairy's. Her delicate body trembled, and her beautiful eyes revealed a bone-deep hatred. Hatred for the blood-armored figure. Because he was the one who killed LV Qinghan. Who are you? Zither Fairy's beautiful eyes were filled with despair as she shouted. Yi Guqin was silent. He also knew that Zhou Tong had framed him. However, he couldn't expose his identity now. Otherwise, his plan to sneak into the 5 Elements Temple and obtain the sacred medicine would be completely ruined. It was impossible for the barbarian tribe to allow a prodigy from one of the 7 forces to possess the ancestral totem. The zither fairy choked when she saw Yiguchen remain silent. She laughed miserably and said, "Since you have killed senior sister Lu, why are you saving me now? I, the zither fairy, do not need your charity." Although zither fairy looked weak, there was a trace of tenacity in her character. Her beautiful eyes flashed with determination. Even though she was seriously injured, she still strummed the zither strings. The remaining true chi in her body turned into zither music waves and blasted towards Yiguchen. Yiguchen just stood there calmly without making any moves. Boom! 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 When the zither true chi landed on the heavenly demon general armor, it caused a loud explosion. However, it did not cause any damage to Yiguchen. "Do you believe that LV Qinghan is not dead?" Yiguchen lowered his voice and said in a hoarse tone. Zither fairy was slightly taken aback. Although this voice was low and hoarse, there was a trace of familiarity. A trace of hesitation appeared on zither fairy's face. At this moment, Zhou Tong, who was in the middle of a battle in the distant arena, shouted, "Zither fairy, quickly leave the arena. Don't believe that fierce person. I saw senior sister Lu being tortured to death with my own eyes. It was incomparably miserable." Zhou Tong's words instantly dispelled zither fairy's doubts. She bit her lip and flashed forward, wanting to attack Yiguchen. Humph, what an idiot. She actually dared to provoke such a ferocious person. She won't even know how she died. Ren Tingting's face was still filled with shock when she kicked the holy maiden to death. At this moment, her face was full of ridicule. She wanted nothing more than for zither fairy to provoke the blood-armored figure and be kicked to death by him. Sigh. The people from the other 7 factions sighed softly when they saw this. Of all people to provoke, she had to provoke such a fierce person. To be able to kick a saintess to death, he had to be at least a peerless genius like Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang. Zither fairy's palm blasted towards Yiguchen's chest. With a loud bang, Yiguchen did not dodge. The zither fairy, however, was pushed back by the recoil and was about to fall. Yiguchen's figure flashed, and he grabbed zither fairy's slender waist and brought her down the arena. This. Everyone was stunned, their eyes filled with astonishment. Ren Tingting was so shocked that her jaw almost dropped. Could it be that the blood-armored figure likes zither fairy? Many people were astonished. "Let me go." Zither fairy struggled, the hatred on her face not diminishing. Yiguchen had no choice but to strike the back of zither fairy's neck and knock her out. He did not hand zither fairy over to Rhino Palace's Ren Tingting and the others. Instead, he handed her over to Sword Sect's Talon, Ji Ling, and the others. Ji Ling and the others received her with puzzled expressions. If not for the fact that this person had 2 primogenitor totems, they would have really thought that this person was Yiguchen. After settling the matter with zither fairy, Yiguchen once again stepped onto another arena. His opponent was another barbarian tribe Holy Sun. The barbarian tribe Holy Sun said with a pale face, "I have heard of you. You are also from the barbarian tribe. Why are you helping the 7 major forces?" He had seen Yiguchen kick the sole barbarian tribe Holy Daughter with his own eyes. He was not much stronger than the sole barbarian tribe Holy Daughter. "I withdraw." The barbarian tribe Holy Sun was about to leave the arena. However, Yiguchen did not give him the chance to do so. Because Yiguchen needed the 5 elements sacred fruit. Boom! Without any fancy moves, Yiguchen directly punched the barbarian tribe Holy Sun. After cultivating the ancient god tactics, Yiguchen's physical strength was much stronger than before, even if he did not transform into the ancient god form. It could be said that Yiguchen could crush most of the barbarian tribe Holy Suns with just his physical strength. Boom! Blood splattered everywhere. Another Holy Sun was blown up by Yiguchen's punch. This scene left everyone aghast. Is this the second Prime Zun? Many people were stunned. The battle in the barren ancient arena was beyond their expectations. First, Prime Zun's peerless blade. Then, Tuoba Shang's domineering aura. Now, this crimson-armored figure's physical strength was unparalleled. Damn it, who is this person? Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Holy Sun, and the others were solemn. Especially Lei Jiuyo. It was because of this crimson-armored figure's interference that he could not kill Sword Sect Talon and take revenge on Yiguchin to avenge his brother. However, Lei Jiuyo felt that this person's strength had increased a lot compared to before. Mu Lanyue was also paying attention to Yiguchin. She had thought that this person was the best candidate to deal with Tuoba Shang. In the next few battles, Yiguchin walked through one arena after another. Almost all of them killed their opponents with a punch or a kick. Yiguchin did not care about the sage-to-be elixirs and mystical rune weapons that he obtained. What he needed was the 5 elemental sacred fruit. It would be even better if there were sage-to-be elixirs that could heal Su Jianshi. It seems that it won't be easy to obtain the 5 elemental sacred fruit. Does it require more intense battles? Yiguchin had also fought many battles. He seemed to have gradually understood. If that was the case, Yiguchin couldn't help but look at the arena where Prime Zun and Tuoba Shang were. There shouldn't be anyone stronger than the two of them. Yiguchin took a step forward, and his body soared high into the sky with the help of the recoil force. He landed between Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang. Both of you, come at me together. Yiguchin's hoarse voice echoed throughout the barren ancient arena. For a moment, the sandstorm stopped and the world fell silent. Chapter 5:12. The entire desolate ancient arena was dead silent. Even the people on the other stages could not help but stop fighting and cast their gazes towards this side. They knew that the figure was strong, but they didn't know he was so arrogant. He probably didn't see Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang's performance before, many people sneered. Yiguchin had shocked them by killing the saints and saintesses with one punch and one kick. But that didn't mean he could take on both Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang at the same time. The ignorant are fearless, a barbarian saintess said coldly. Tuoba Shang was their hero and was destined to become a quintuple crown king in the future. Any opponent was nothing in front of a quintuple crown king. And Tuoba Shang was the closest to becoming a quintuple crown king. That was why he was so popular and respected by so many saints and saintesses in the barbarian race. On the other hand, the figure in blood armor was rumored to have 2 primogenitor totems. But even so, he was only a double crown king. The strength that Gu Zun had displayed earlier had also received everyone's approval. Even the barbarian race couldn't help but admire him. But now, the figure in blood armor was arrogantly saying he wanted to challenge both of them at the same time. Wasn't he overestimating himself? Humph, so what if you have amazing strength? Challenging both Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang at the same time is foolish of you, Zhou Tong thought coldly. It wasn't just the desolate ancient arena. The arrival of Yiguchin caused an uproar among the spectators outside the ancient desolate forbidden zone. Is that figure in blood armor the one with the soaring serpent and vermilion bird totems? Many voices sounded from the barbarian race's side. The fire race and water race patriarchs were especially interested. The vermilion bird and soaring serpent were the supreme totems of their races. Old Demon Hua, is there a saint in your fire race who has awakened the vermilion bird totem? Another barbarian race patriarch asked the fire race patriarch. No one in my fire race has awakened the vermilion bird totem. The strongest saint is Yan Xuanji, the fire race patriarch said doubtfully. He had no idea where this holy son of the barbarian race who had awakened the vermilion bird totem had come from. What about the patriarch of the water tribe? Some people asked. The patriarch of the water tribe also shook his head. No one in the water tribe has ever awakened the soaring snake totem. Who is this person? He has 2 primogenitor totems. Could it be that he came from the 5 Elements Temple? Many barbarian tribe experts guessed. It seemed to be the only possibility. However, there was no news of this person in the 2 great barbarian families. Say, do you think he's not a member of our barbarian tribe? The Jin clan's patriarch suddenly frowned. Impossible. As soon as he finished speaking, the other barbarian tribe leaders shook their heads in unison. It's almost impossible for someone who isn't from the barbarian tribe to possess the supreme totem, let alone the ancestral totem, some of the barbarian tribe experts said. You're right. I was thinking too much. The leader of the Jin clan shook his head and laughed. On the other side, the people from the 7 great factions were also puzzled by the blood-armored figure. However, most people believed that he should be a holy son of the barbarian race. As for why he killed his fellow clansmen, no one knew. The atmosphere in the ancient desolate arena was cold and solemn. Yi Guqin, who was wearing the Sky Demon General armor, stood calmly on the arena. Gu Zun and Tuoba Shang stood on opposite sides. They had fought for a long time before, but there was no clear winner. The only disadvantage was that Tuoba Shang had been injured by Gu Zun in order to obtain the compass. However, this wasn't enough to defeat Tuoba Shang. You're the one who awakened 2 primogenitor totems. I've been looking for you, but I didn't expect you to show yourself. Very well, I'll take your primogenitor totem. Tuoba Shang stared coldly at Yi Guqin as a cold smile appeared on his face. The barbarian tribe didn't lack cruel secret techniques that could rob others of their totems. Yi Guqin looked back coldly. Tuoba Shang only knew that he had 2 primogenitor totems. However, he didn't know that he had already awakened all 5 primogenitor totems. He had even cultivated the ancient god tactics and obtained the ancient god body. The current him didn't fear any of the young generation's geniuses. He even dared to face life and death chamber experts head-on. However, compared to Tuoba Shang, Yi Guqin was more concerned about Gu Zun. This was his first time seeing Gu Zun. However, the oppressive aura exuding from Gu Zun and the awe-inspiring saber essence made Yi Guqin frown slightly. The dangerous aura from Gu Zun was even stronger than Xian Hao and the young war emperor. This was a truly dangerous person. I, Gu Zun, will not team up with anyone. Gu Zun dragged his blade and walked down the stage. He didn't want to team up with others to deal with Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. He should be able to get the 5 elements sacred fruit if he fought with Tuoba Shang. That's fine. I, Tuoba Shang, also don't want to team up with others. I alone can suppress you. Tuoba Shang's eyes were burning with unprecedented passion. If he could rob Yi Guqin of his primogenitor totems, how strong would he become? He might really become the 5-crown king or even the barbarian king. This battle was extremely eye-catching. On one side was the 4-crown king, Tuoba Shang, who could fight with Gu Zun. On the other side was the mysterious figure in blood armor who had 2 primogenitor totems and could instantly kill the barbarian saint. Not only in the desolate ancient arena, but outside the desolate ancient forbidden zone, the experts from both camps were also paying close attention. However, the experts from the barbarian race didn't look too good. This was because, in their eyes, these 2 were both barbarian sacred sons after all. This was considered an internal strife. After the ancient desolate forbidden zone is over, we must find out who the person who has 2 primogenitor totems is. A barbarian expert said coldly. The atmosphere in the ancient desolate arena was frozen. Tuoba Shang's cold eyes swept over Yi Guqin. He didn't say anything else and directly attacked. He punched out, bursting out with shocking air waves that poured out in all directions. Yi Guqin didn't draw his blood hell sword and also punched out. He really wanted to know how strong his physical body was now. The mysterious figure in blood armor dares to fight Tuoba Shang barehanded? Many people were stunned. Tuoba Shang was wearing a pair of gloves that were mystical inscription weapons and had sharp thorns. One punch would probably leave a few bloody holes in one's body. Although the figure in blood armor was covered in armor, his fists weren't covered. Humph, you're too arrogant. Tuoba Shang's eyes shone with cold light. In his eyes, such an arrogant move could only be considered stupid. Yi Guqin was silent. The moment their fists collided, the mocking look on Tuoba Shang's face disappeared without a trace. With a loud bang, an incomparably shocking wave of air swept out in all directions with their fists as the center. With a loud clang, the two figures retreated at the same time. What was even more shocking was that the sharp thorns on Tuoba Shang's gauntlets were actually broken. Even Tuoba Shang was stunned for a moment. That was a pair of gloves that were mystical inscription weapons. He broke a mystical inscription weapon with his bare hands. Not only Tuoba Shang, but all the spectating skyprides were also shocked. They had seen people with strong physical bodies, but they had never seen someone so strong. Chapter 5:13. It could be said that even among the barbarian tribe who were good at refining their bodies, not many people could withstand the attack of a mystical inscription weapon with their physical body. This was because one had to refine their physical body to an extremely high level to do so. However, Ye Guqin had done it. All the onlookers were shocked. Even Tuoba Shang, who was originally full of arrogance, could not help but restrain himself. A person who could withstand a mystical inscription weapon with his bare hands, regardless of anything else, could be considered a top supreme talent with his physical body alone. However, Ye Guqin was the only one who was not surprised at all. He was not surprised by the result. He already had a perfect physical body. Together with the flawless diamond body, he could withstand a mystical inscription weapon. Now, his physical body had been baptized by the 5 primogenitor totems and he had cultivated the ancient god technique. In the entire Saint Origin dynasty and the barbarian tribe, he might not be the best in terms of physical strength, but at least there were not many people who could compare with him. Interesting. It's more interesting to defeat you like this. Tuoba Shang looked cold. He punched again, and the power of his punches was shocking. Every time he punched, a transparent air blast would shoot out, creating ripples in the air. Ye Guqin did not use any sword moves. He did not even take out the blood hell sword. He was just using his fists and feet to fight with Tuoba Shang. Bang! 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 Every time their fists collided, a shockwave rippled outwards. All the spectating skyprides felt as though their blood was on fire when their fists collided with each other. He's stronger than when he was in the valley. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaotian, and the others looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Interesting. Have a taste of my punch again. Tuoba Shang saw that the situation was in a stalemate, and he no longer held back. There was a loud explosion in his body, and an extremely hot totem power burst out. An endless hot aura rose from his body. Soon after, it transformed into an illusory giant beast in the air. The giant beast was like a lizard, but its back was like a volcanic rock. There were countless cracks on its back, and hot lava seemed to be flowing out of them. It's Tuoba Shang's fire attribute totem, the Balrog lizard. Some barbarian saints exclaimed. Tuoba Shang usually disdained to use his totem power in a battle. However, it was obvious that Ye Guqin had put a lot of pressure on Tuoba Shang, so he immediately summoned one of his totems. Flame Devil Tyrant Fist. Tuoba Shang roared and added the totem power of the Balrog lizard to his punch. The fist radiance was like a raging fire, as if it was going to burn everything in its path. The punch seemed to be accompanied by the shadow of the Balrog lizard as it charged towards Ye Guqin. What a powerful punch! Tuoba Shang's punch caused the faces of the skyprides from the 7 forces to turn pale. They asked themselves, if it were them, it would be almost impossible for them to withstand this explosive punch. As for Ye Guqin, his expression under his helmet was as calm as ever. He also activated the power of the vermilion bird totem within his body. With a loud cry, the vermilion bird divine fire surged out from Ye Guqin's body. The vermilion bird divine fire, which was originally red, turned into a demonic blood red under the cover of the heavenly demon plate armor. A vermilion bird spirit also flapped its wings and flew out from Ye Guqin's body, crying into the sky. The vermilion bird was the ancestor of the fire attribute totem. Its vermilion bird divine fire was comparable to the rare flames of heaven and earth. As soon as the vermilion bird totem appeared, Tuoba Shang's Balrog lizard seemed to be greatly suppressed. The flames around its body weakened significantly, and a human-like look of fear appeared in its eyes. That was the absolute suppression of the ancestor totem over the inferior totems. At the same time, the power of Tuoba Shang's flame devil tyrant fist was also weakened. Yiguchen's fist radiance, which was surrounded by the vermilion bird divine fire, collided with Tuoba Shang's attack. Bang! Flames surged and engulfed the arena. After the blow, Tuoba Shang was the one who was pushed back. The entire barren ancient arena was dead silent. The barbarian tribe saints and saintesses were even more shocked. Tuoba Shang, who was invincible in their hearts, was pushed back. Is that the ancestor totem, the vermilion bird totem? As soon as it appeared, I felt like my aura was being suppressed. A saintess of the fire tribe looked at Tuoba Shang in awe and fear. The ancestor totem could suppress all the other totems under it. That was why the ancestor totem was so rare in the barbarian tribe. If it appeared, it would immediately gain a high status in the barbarian tribe. It could even be directly inducted into the Five Elements Temple. In the arena, Tuoba Shang's expression gradually turned serious. Even he could not avoid the suppression of the totem. If that's the case. A cold light flashed across Tuoba Shang's eyes. Even if he could not win against quality, he could still win against quantity. After making up his mind, Tuoba Shang once again activated the totem power in his body. As a dense water vapor permeated the surroundings, a large green python appeared from within. It was Tuoba Shang's water totem, the undying green python. Green python devours the sky. Tuoba Shang's body seemed to have turned into a giant python. At the same time, the totem spirit moved with his body. His fists were like the jaws of a green python, biting towards Yiguchen. The power of this move was also very strong. However, Yiguchen also took out his water ancestor totem again. Shocking water ancestor totem power erupted from Yiguchen's body like a raging wave. Then, a giant snake with 2 wings on its back darted out and hissed at the sky. It was the soaring snake. As soon as the soaring snake totem appeared, Tuoba Shang's undying green python totem was suppressed again, and the power of his move was weakened again. Yiguchen gathered the water ancestor totem power in his fist and punched out. With a loud bang, Tuoba Shang was pushed back again. He really has the water ancestor totem and the fire ancestor totem. Many barbarian saints and saintesses exclaimed. Dragon Girl's beautiful eyes shone. She was probably the only one who knew that the figure in the blood armor was Yiguchen. However, even though she knew, she was still amazed. It was unbelievable that an outsider could have 2 ancestor totems at the same time. Many barbarian race experts outside the ancient barbarian forbidden zone were watching the battle intently. It really is the vermilion bird and the soaring snake totem. Many barbarian race experts were shocked. They didn't know that there was such a peerless saint in the barbarian race. This is all you can rely on. Facing Yiguchen's 2 ancestor totems, even someone as strong as 4-Crown King looked a little serious. However, the corners of his mouth curled into a proud smile. I, Tuoba Shang, am able to dominate the barbarian race because I am 4-Crown King. With the 4 ancestor totems, no one can defeat me. Tuoba Shang roared and his aura shook the sky. As he once again activated the power of the totem, the 2 totem spirits once again appeared from his body. One was the gold saint elephant, a metal-based totem spirit. It shone with golden light like a golden mountain. The other was the earth dragon beast, an earth-based totem spirit. It had a huge body and when it appeared, the earth shook. At this moment, Tuoba Shang was surrounded by the Balrog lizard, the undying green python, the gold saint elephant, and the earth dragon beast. With the help of the 4 ancestor totem spirits, Tuoba Shang's aura rose to a terrifying level. Even a peerless genius like Gu Zun had a solemn look in his dazed eyes. 4-Crown King. For Crown King. All the barbarian race saints and saintesses shouted when they saw Tuoba Shang's 4 ancestor totems. This was the aura that a peerless expert of the younger generation of the barbarian race should have. This aura caused the expressions of the geniuses from the 7 major forces to change drastically. Is this Tuoba Shang's true strength? Even Xian Hao, the young war emperor, and the others looked very serious. If they were to fight against the current Tuoba Shang, it was likely that they would not be able to gain an advantage. It seems like the battle is about to end. Many barbarian race experts outside the ancient barbarian forbidden zone shook their heads. Tuoba Shang had taken out 4 ancestor totems at the same time. Even if the figure in crimson armor had 2 ancestor totems, he wouldn't have a good time. Although he lacked a wood ancestor totem, Tuoba Shang's strength had reached the peak with the 4 ancestor totems. Let me ask you now. Do you admit defeat? Tuoba Shang stood proudly. With the 4 ancestor totem spirits as a backdrop, he looked like a barbarian god. Is it rare to have 4 ancestor totems? Yi Guqin said indifferently. Can I take it as jealousy? You have 2 ancestor totems, but even so, you have to give in before my 4 ancestor totems. Tuoba Shang said arrogantly. Yi Guqin looked indifferent and didn't say anything else. He slowly took a step forward. With the first step, endless metal sword chi shot up into the sky as if it wanted to split the 9 heavens. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the spirit of a white tiger appeared. The tiger's roar shook the mountains and rivers. Yi Guqin took a second step. With the second step, a huge green dragon came out of Yi Guqin's body. It was covered in green dragon scales and the aura of the wood ancestor filled the land. The dragon's roar filled the sky. Yi Guqin was the last to take the third step. With the third step, the land shook. An incomparably majestic and terrifying giant shadow rose from the ground. The black tortoise roared and the black snake coiled around its body hissed. The earth ancestor black tortoise appeared. At this moment, Yi Guqin was around. The metal white tiger. The wood green dragon. The water snake. The fire vermilion bird. The earth ancestor black tortoise. The 5 ancestor totems had appeared. At this moment, Yi Guqin was like a god king. His aura swept up the wind and clouds. I am the 5 crown king. Do you admit defeat? His words were like the voice of a god king. It shook the heavens and earth and silenced everything. Chapter 5:14. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was stunned. Everyone's mind went blank and they could not think. They could only stare blankly at the figure in crimson armor who stood there calmly. The 5 primogenitor spirits around him were like heavenly guardians that surrounded his body. Tuoba Shang took a few steps back and his mind went blank. He could not even think for a short period of time. He even wondered if he was dreaming or if his eyes were playing tricks on him. However, that true and real pressure mercilessly told Tuoba Shang that Lin Fan's strength was not enough. Everything in front of him was the truth. The person in front of him had the 5 primogenitors' totems. Impossible, absolutely impossible. I, Tuoba Shang, have the highest chance of becoming the 5 crown king. How can it be you? Tuoba Shang's expression was cold and filled with disbelief. It felt like running with all your might and almost reaching the finish line to receive the reward. In the end, someone was already standing at the finish line and enjoying the reward. To Tuoba Shang, this was something he could not accept. Not only Tuoba Shang, but all the barbarian tribe saints and saintesses were also shocked. It was none other than those 3 words, 5 crown king. 5 crown king was a legend of the barbarian tribe. He was a religion. When 5 crown king was alive, the 5 elements barbarian tribe was at its peak. They had almost destroyed the Saint Origin dynasty. However, 5 crown king had disappeared and the barbarian tribe had retreated to the 5 elements land. The reason why the war had started again was mainly because of the oracle in the Five Elements Temple. It said that the real Five-Crown King would be born in this war. At that time, everyone in the barbarian tribe thought that the oracle was referring to the Four-Crown King, Tuoba Shang. After all, he was the closest to becoming the Five-Crown King. However, looking at the figure in crimson armor surrounded by the five primogenitor spirits, all the barbarian tribe saints and saintesses were in disbelief. He really is the Five-Crown King. Mulanua covered her mouth with her slender hand and opened her eyes wide. She wanted to recruit this person to see if he could fight against Tuoba Shang. However, this person was the most orthodox successor of the Five-Crown King. Even Tuoba Shang could only stand aside. Dragon Lady's watery eyes widened. She was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. Because she knew Yiguchen's identity, she was more shocked than anyone else. Five-Crown King's inheritance had actually fallen into the hands of an outsider. If this news were to leak out, Yiguchen would probably be chased to the ends of the earth by the Five Elements Temple. After all, Five-Crown King was the most powerful warrior in the Berserker tribe. No matter what, his legacy could not be taken away by an outsider. Yiguchen, you have been hiding things from me for so long. Dragon Lady sighed in her heart as she revealed a wry smile. The shock that Yiguchen brought to these holy sons and holy daughters of the barbarian race could not be any greater. As for the seven great powers, although they did not have much respect for the Five-Crown King, they still had a lot of respect for him. However, they had heard of the Five-Crown King's name. Five-Crown King. Could he be the person who once led the Berserker tribe and almost destroyed the dynasty? Then just how strong is his successor? Many of the prodigies looked towards Yiguchen with fear in their eyes. So strong. Zhou Tong's expression was solemn. When his battle ended just now, Zhou Tong also obtained the life and death intent as he wished. However, that Five-Crown King's successor gave Zhou Tong an enormous sense of oppression. Zhou Tong even felt that even if he broke through to the life and death threshold, he might not be this person's match. Who is this person? Zhou Tong's eyes were cold. He had once thought that it was Yiguchen. However, from the looks of it now, it was impossible. Yiguchen was already a genius when it came to the cultivation of sword principle. In addition, he also had forging talent. If he still had such a strong totem cultivation talent now, Zhou Tong would be speechless. He is Five-Crown King. Yan Wushuang and the rest were shocked. However, they were unable to figure out why this lofty Five-Crown King would help their Sword Sect's Tower Forest. At this moment, outside the Forbidden Zone, the barbarian race camp was in a great uproar. Who is the successor of Five-Crown King? To be able to obtain the legacy of Five-Crown King, could he be the Five-Crown King who can lead the barbarian race to the future? Many barbarian race experts looked at each other. Only a barbarian race expert with a face full of scars had a cold expression. He was the head of Tuoba family and Tuoba Shang's father, Tuoba Outyan. How is this possible? Shang should be the Five-Crown King. Tuoba Outyan's expression was ugly. The reason why Tuoba family could obtain the support of Five Elements Temple was largely because of Tuoba Shang. However, the true successor of Five-Crown King had appeared. This was undoubtedly a slap to the Tuoba family's face. Hee, Tuoba Outyan, the oracle was right. The true Five-Crown King has appeared. On the other side, a middle-aged man laughed. He was Mulanua's father, the head of Mulanbua family. Humph. Tuoba Outyan did not speak, but a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Shang, you must kill this person. On the other side, the seven major forces were also stirring up a commotion. After all, Five-Crown King was very famous among the upper echelons. As the successor of Five-Crown King, he stood at the peak of the elites the moment he appeared. We must find out the identity of the successor of Five-Crown King. Regardless of whether it was the barbarian race or the seven major forces, they were all eager to find out who the person under the armor was. The atmosphere in the barren ancient arena was dead silent. Only Yiguchen and the 5 primogenitor spirits beside him were roaring in the sky. I don't believe it. I, Tuoba Shang, don't believe it. You must die today. I am the true successor of 5 Crown King. Tuoba Shang's expression became ferocious. Just now, he had taken out the 4 supreme totems and asked Yiguchen if he was convinced. Now, Yiguchen had taken out the 5 primogenitor totems and asked him if he was convinced. This caused Tuoba Shang to be infuriated, and he felt as if his internal organs were burning. He was angered to the point of almost spitting blood. For beast golden body. Tuoba Shang roared angrily and unleashed all his power. The 4 supreme totem spirits outside his body were all absorbed into his body. In the next moment, Tuoba Shang's body grew taller. His muscles bulged and his veins popped out. He was like a small giant. His aura increased tremendously. At the same time, his physical body became stronger. The current Tuoba Shang seemed to have completely absorbed the power of the 4 supreme totems. Oh, it is similar to the ancient god form, Yiguchen thought to himself. Tuoba Shang's current state was similar to Yiguchen's ancient god form after activating the ancient god tactic. However, in reality, they were very different. Tuoba Shang had only absorbed the power of the 4 supreme totems into his body to stimulate his own power. However, Yiguchen had truly cultivated the ancient god tactic and completely stimulated the power of the ancient god. One was a clumsy imitation, while the other was an authentic ancient god tactic. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. In that case, let me try the true power of the 5 primogenitor totems. Yiguchen's eyes surged with a peerless radiance. Chapter 5:15. After activating the 4 beast golden body, Tuoba Shang's physical strength had reached a terrifying level. He stomped his foot on the ground and the entire desolate ancient fighting ring trembled as if it was being trampled by an ancient giant elephant. His golden totem, the golden divine elephant, had been able to increase his strength by a large margin. Golden King Seal. Tuoba Shang clenched his fist and punched out. Golden divine radiance surged as a dazzling golden fist mark appeared on the tip of Tuoba Shang's fist. His fist pierced through the void with a sharp whistling sound and smashed directly toward Yiguchen's head. This punch was Tuoba Shang's way of venting his hatred. Yiguchen also attacked and activated the power of the green dragon totem in his body. Dense green light spread across Yiguchen's arm and turned into a lifelike and ferocious dragon claw. The green dragon claw glowed with green radiance and was very powerful. Although Yiguchen had used the green dragon claw before, the green dragon claw back then was very illusory and not as real as it was now. Therefore, it did not give away any clues. Yiguchen's green dragon claw fist collided with Tuoba Shang's fist. Boom! The sound of the collision reverberated in all directions. Yiguchen was slightly surprised when he felt the huge force from the fist. Tuoba Shang's 4 beast golden body was indeed useful. His physical strength and toughness were much stronger than before. However, even so, it was still unable to shake Yiguchen. Yiguchen's muscles and blood vessels suddenly vibrated and a strong internal force went through the green dragon claw and attacked Tuoba Shang. There was a loud bang. Both of them retreated at the same time. However, it was obvious that Tuoba Shang was at a disadvantage. He retreated more than 10 steps while Yiguchen only retreated a few steps. Even Tuoba Shang, who has activated the 4 beast golden body, is no match for 5 Crown King in terms of strength. Many of the barbarian tribe members were shocked. Strength could only be determined by comparison. Previously, Tuoba Shang was like an absolute mountain to them. However, before his eyes, an even more majestic ancient mountain had appeared. Some of the barbarian tribe Sanuses even looked at Yiguchen with sparkling eyes. 5 Crown King was a hero in the hearts of all the barbarians. Now that the 5 Crown King's successor had appeared, how could these barbarian tribe Sanuses not fall in love with him? Again. Tuoba Shang's eyes bloodshot. He knew that today, he had to kill this 5-crown king who appeared out of nowhere. Otherwise, if he was allowed to come into contact with the 5 Elements Temple, his and the Tuoba family's status would be affected. Heaven-suppressing seal. Tuoba Shang performed his ultimate technique once again. Intense golden light rose from his body and turned into a huge golden seal in midair. There was a golden divine elephant carved on it, and it seemed to have a terrifying aura that could suppress the ancient times. Go! The holy elephant heaven-suppressing seal was like a golden mountain, pressing down on Yiguchen. Rumble rumble. Yiguchen did not dodge. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he was directly suppressed by the heaven-suppressing rumble. Is he going to lose? Many people were shocked. Tuoba Shang's lips curled into a cold smile. He knew how powerful his move was. He had used it before and it could even injure experts at the hidden gate of life and death. In his eyes, no matter how strong 5-crown king was, he had not reached the hidden gate of life and death. Die! Tuoba Shang once again activated the Balrog lizard totem. Terrifying raging flames surged out and were about to land on the golden seal again to completely end Yiguchen's life. However, right at this moment, the golden seal that was pressing down started to rumble and tremble. Many cracks rapidly appeared on its surface. Break! The word break was like a golden spear in armored horses, shaking the mountains and rivers. As the word rang out, an incomparably sharp sword chi burst out from the golden seal and rushed out in all directions. The terrifying silver sword chi seemed to be able to pierce through everything in the world. It was the sharpness of the golden white tiger. The heaven-suppressing rumble exploded under the boundless silver sword chi. Yiguchen stood calmly in his blood-red armor. He placed one hand behind his back and used the other hand as a sword. He directly used the power of the white tiger totem to shatter the golden seal. So strong. Everyone was shocked. Yiguchen's casual and carefree appearance formed a huge contrast with Tuoba Shang's all-out appearance. Is this the power of 5-crown king? Many barbarian race Sainus' eyes lit up. Even Mulanua couldn't help but sigh. If we can get 5-crown king to join our peace faction, we might be able to influence the 5 Elements Temple's decision and end the endless war. Mulanua's eyes flashed. However, 5-crown king had killed some barbarian race saints and saintesses before, so Mulanua did not know how 5-crown king treated the barbarian race. Tuoba Shang's expression turned grave when he saw that Yiguchen was safe and sound. He unleashed his combat strength and attacked again. Sacred Elephant Heaven-Suppressing Seal, Flame Demon Tyrant Fist, Sky-Devouring Azure Python, and other supreme totem martial arts were all executed by Tuoba Shang in a fluid manner. Explosive auras spread out in all directions. This Tuoba Shang isn't bad either. Many barbarians sighed. Only Tuoba Shang had the ability to use 4 different totemic powers to such an extent. However, in the face of Tuoba Shang's overwhelming attacks, Yiguchen did not dodge at all. The 5 primogenitor totems were activated. Chapter 5:16. Yiguchen's physical body was not ordinary to begin with. Now that he had activated the ancient god's skill and transformed into the form of an ancient god, his physical strength had increased by 3 times. This was a terrifying boost that was not weaker than Tuoba Shang's mad demon secret skill. It might even be stronger. After all, this was the cultivation method of the ancient god clan. Even in the entire South Sky region, it was a rare inheritance. Yiguchen's body suddenly grew to 9 feet and the heavenly demon general armor fitted his body perfectly. Although the armor covered him, the ancient and desolate aura and the light runes could not be completely covered. That is, the barbarian tribe saints and saintesses were shocked. Yiguchen's aura seemed to have an ancient and desolate aura, which made them feel a sense of respect. This was a form of reverence for the ancestors. This was because the bloodline of the barbarian tribe came from the ancient god clan. These young barbarian tribe saints and saintesses might not know what an ancient god was. However, outside the ancient barbarian forbidden zone, the experts of the barbarian tribe were in an uproar. That light rune, could it be? There's no mistake about it. Lord Five Crown King used that form in the past as well. That was the form of our Berserker tribe's ancestor. Right now, there are still remnants of our ancestor in Five Element Temple. The tribe leaders and elders of the barbarian tribe were shocked. Previously, they had some doubts about the Five Crown King who had appeared out of nowhere. However, now that the ancient god form had appeared, they were completely sure that this person was the true successor of the Five Crown King. Tuoba Outyen's face was extremely ugly. Mulanbua was also shocked. He wondered if Mulanbua would try to rope in the mysterious Five Crown King. In the ancient barbarian fighting ring. When he saw Yiguchen's aura increase again, Tuoba Shang's eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. However, his fist did not retreat. Instead, it pressed forward. Yiguchen also attacked. Without any fancy moves, he activated the power of the five ancestor totems and held them in his hands. Although he had transformed into the form of an ancient god, he was only a half-star ancient god. Hence, he could not perform many of the special techniques of the ancient god clan. But even so, Yiguchen's current strength was already comparable to a minor profound martial realm cultivator, let alone Tuoba Shang. Their fists collided, and the chi waves that burst out were far more shocking than before. As soon as they touched, Yiguchen could feel the terrifying power, accompanied by the power of the four great totems, rushing toward him. At the same time, his ancient god body was bursting with unprecedented power. The ancient runes on the surface of his body flickered as if they were breathing. As he breathed in and out, Yiguchen's physical body was strengthened tremendously. Boom! Yiguchen punched out as if he wanted to shatter the heavens. Puchi! Tuoba Shang's body was sent flying. He could no longer hold back the blood in his mouth and spurted it out. The arm that he used to punch looked like it was about to shatter, and it was dripping with blood. Yiguchen was panting slightly. Blood was dripping from his fist as well. However, compared to Tuoba Shang, it was much better. To Yiguchen, who had the body of an ancient god, such a small injury was nothing. This, looking at Tuoba Shang, who was spurting blood, the entire desolate ancient arena was dead silent. No one made a sound as they were all deeply shocked. They could feel the power of Tuoba Shang's four symbols mad demon fist. However, he was still sent flying by the mysterious Five Crown King with a single punch. This Five Crown King might really be able to compete with a life and death profound martial realm expert. Many people looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. It was not easy to challenge someone of a higher level. However, they were certain that Five Crown King could do it. After sending Tuoba Shang flying with a single punch, a ball of divine light appeared on the desolate ancient arena once again. Yiguchen's eyes flickered as he stepped forward and took out the item within. It was a strange fruit with 5 different colors. It's indeed the 5 elements sacred fruit. Yiguchen's eyes lit up. His guess was right. The more intense the battle, the greater the harvest. And what kind of harvest could compare to the Saint Elixir? Unfortunately, the 5 elements sacred fruit only contained dense 5 elements mystic energy and did not have much healing effect. Hence, he couldn't give it to Su Jianshi. It's actually a saint herb. The 5 elements sacred fruit in Yiguchen's hand made many people jealous. Quasi-saint herbs were extremely rare. True saint herbs were rare even in the barbarian race and the dynasty. Saint herbs were extremely effective and were something that everyone dreamed of. If there were divine palace experts present, they would probably be unable to resist the greed in their hearts. However, although these sky prides were greedy, they did not dare to make a move. After all, Tuoba Shang was beaten like a dead dog. If they went up to challenge 5 Crown King, they would only die a more miserable death. After obtaining the 5 elements sacred fruit, Yiguchen had achieved his goal in the desolate ancient forbidden zone. He looked at Tuoba Shang with a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Although he had defeated Tuoba Shang, it did not mean that Tuoba Shang was weak. In the future, Tuoba Shang would still be a great enemy. Ye Guqin did not have the habit of cutting weeds without removing the roots. Tuoba Shang slowly stood up as if he had seen the killing intent in Ye Guqin's eyes. His entire chin was covered in blood, and one of his arms was severely injured. It was broken. It could be said that the four-crown king of the barbarian race was in a sorry state. However, there was extreme madness in his eyes. Ha! Five-crown king, you want to kill me? Tuoba Shang spat out a mouthful of blood and sneered. I don't think you're a naive person, Ye Guqin said in a hoarse voice. How could Tuoba Shang not know his fate when the battle had reached such a stage? Ha! You're indeed the first person to force me, Tuoba Shang, into such a state. However, do you think victory is in your hands? Tuoba Shang laughed. Ye Guqin was not the only one to frown when he heard this. Even the heavens prides of the seven forces were frowning. What other trump cards did Tuoba Shang have? Tuoba Shang's blood-stained lips curled into a cruel smile when he saw the puzzled expressions of the prodigies from the seven forces. He slowly raised his hand, and there was an object in his hand. It was the compass-shaped object that he had obtained in the barren ancient arena. Ye Guqin stared at the compass-shaped object and felt that something was amiss. Don't you have any doubts as to why I risked my life to obtain this object? It's not a mystical inscription weapon, but now, it can bury all of you. As soon as Tuoba Shang finished speaking, almost all of his totem power surged into the compass-shaped object like waves. In the next moment, the grey compass-shaped object that looked inconspicuous suddenly exploded with a shocking wave of divine light. Ancient barbarian race words covered the entire compass-shaped object like ants. When Ye Guqin saw this, he said coldly, this is not a compass-shaped object. It's an array disc. Ha, that's right. So, all of you, die. Tuoba Shang activated the array disc completely. The entire barren ancient forbidden zone seemed to be trembling. The ancient land around the barren ancient arena shook like the surface of a drum. An incomparably majestic formation slowly materialized on the ground. Oh no, this array disc is controlling the barren ancient forbidden zone's great array. Ye Guqin thought to himself. Chapter 5:17. The most famous thing about the ancient desolate forbidden zone was the peerless array hidden deep underground. That array could suppress any expert that entered the ancient desolate forbidden zone. It was obvious how powerful it was. However, other than that, no one knew that the array could be controlled. Looking at Tuoba Shang's cold expression, they knew that the peerless array hidden deep in the ancient desolate forbidden zone was not as simple as suppressing one's strength. Have the seven major factions never thought about why the barbarian tribe chose the ancient desolate forbidden zone as the location for the final battle? Tuoba Shang's voice was hoarse with a hint of sarcasm. His gaze swept across the geniuses of the seven major factions as if he was looking at a row of corpses. The geniuses of the seven major factions changed their expressions. Even Ye Guqin's gaze turned deep. He had previously thought that the reason why the barbarian tribe chose the ancient desolate forbidden zone was because of one reason. There was only one reason, and that was that the ancient desolate forbidden zone had a great formation that suppressed the strength of experts. This could, to a large extent, prevent the experts from the two factions from secretly killing the experts. This was because if these experts entered, their strength would be suppressed and they would face the risk of dying. The four elders of the Shinto family were living examples. Not only Ye Guqin, but many of the experts of the seven major factions also had the same thought. That was why they did not object. However, it seemed that the situation was not that simple. Ha, I have to say that you are really naive. The ancient desolate forbidden zone is an ancient battlefield of the barbarian tribe. We naturally know more secrets than you. The elders of the Five Elements Temple already knew that the peerless array in the ancient desolate forbidden zone could be activated. To control the array, an array disc was needed. That was why I paid a price to obtain this array disc. Now, it will be your time of death. Tuoba Shang's expression was cold. The reason why he said so much was because he thought that all the people of the 7 major factions were destined to die. They actually have such a trump card. Not only were the people of the 7 major factions shocked, but most of the barbarian tribe people were also in the dark. They only understood now. However, most of the barbarian tribe saints and saintesses had cold smiles on their faces. Obviously, they wanted to see this scene. Only the saints and saintesses of the peace faction, led by Mulanue, had ugly expressions. Although this had nothing to do with their safety. However, if all the heaven's favorites of the 7 forces were to die here, how furious would the 7 forces be? At that time, there would be no room for negotiation. It would be a battle of life and death. If the experts of the 7 great powers were to come out in full force, then besides the 5-element temple that could guarantee their safety, which of the other powers could guarantee that they wouldn't suffer heavy losses? It could be said that this was a crazy gamble. He's too reckless. If he makes the wrong move, the barbarian race will be in deep trouble. Mulanue's pretty face was filled with anxiety. However, she knew that she couldn't stop the crazy Tuoba Shang. What should we do? Let's run. Some of the sky prides from the 7 major forces panicked. If Tuoba Shang really activated this peerless array, not to mention these divine soul realm sky prides, even life and death chamber experts might not be able to survive. I've just obtained the will of life and death, how can I die here? Zhou Tong's face was as gloomy as water. Previously, he had been targeting Yiguchen and didn't care about the barbarian race at all. At this critical moment, even if he had the will of life and death, it would be difficult for him to break through. Not only him, but Xian Hao, the young war emperor, and the others also looked extremely solemn. A cold light flashed across Gu Zun's somewhat dazed eyes. Looking at the sky prides from the 7 major forces who were running around like headless flies, Tuoba Shang shook his head slightly. His blood-stained smile looked extremely creepy. Don't even think about escaping. No matter how fast you are, can you be faster than me when I activate the array? Tuoba Shang's eyes were filled with mockery. Most of the sky prides from the 7 major forces had ashen faces. Even Yen Wushuang and the others gritted their teeth. They had no other choice at this moment. TSK, looks like we don't have to do anything. Golden Sun Saint and the others smiled and shook their heads. Lei Jilyo looked at Yiguchen with a hint of unwillingness. Since 5 Crown King's identity had been exposed, it wouldn't be easy for Lei Jilyo to deal with Yiguchen. However, in the end, Tuoba Shang still looked at Yiguchen, the mockery in his eyes thickening. Quintuple Crown King, do you think you can stay out of this? You're part of this. As soon as Tuoba Shang finished speaking, the people from the Berserker tribe were shocked. What? Tuoba Shang wants to kill 5 Crown King. That's our barbarian race's 5 Crown King. Some barbarian saints and saintesses were hesitant. Although 5 Crown King was wearing blood-red armor, they were already certain that Yiguchen was from the barbarian race. These barbarian saints and saintesses naturally didn't want 5 Crown King to die. Tuoba Shang is crazy. He's even going to kill 5 Crown King to get rid of his enemies. Mulanue clenched her fists. It was obvious that Tuoba Shang's killing intent towards 5 Crown King had reached its peak. 5 Crown King, you've just appeared out of nowhere and are about to die. If you have any last words, just say them. Tuoba Shang's blood-stained lips curled into a smile. His smile was carefree and comfortable. When Yiguchen had appeared, the 5 primogenitor totems had suppressed him and put Tuoba Shang in a difficult position. However, the one facing death now was 5 Crown King. Is our barbarian race's 5 Crown King going to die as soon as he appeared? Many barbarian saints and saintesses sighed. Only Lei Jilyo and the others snickered. They were happy to see this. It should be enough. Yiguchen ignored Tuoba Shang and looked at the 5 elemental sacred fruit in his hand. Since you don't have any last words, then die. Seeing that Yi Guqin didn't respond, Tuoba Shang's eyes turned colder. He had poured almost all of his totem power into the array disc. Even so, he could only activate the array for a short period of time and could only use 1/10 of its full power. Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array, Killing Array, Open. Tuoba Shang roared and raised the array disc high. In an instant, the entire area around the barren ancient fighting ring shone brightly. It was as if countless barbarians and savage beasts had appeared and were roaring in the sky. At the same time, a terrifying totem power burst out from the ground, as if it was about to break out. Outside the barren ancient forbidden zone, the top powers of the seven forces sensed that something was wrong when they saw Tuoba Shang activating the array disc. When the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array was activated, the top powers of the seven forces were shocked. Damn it, it's an earth-grade array. The top powers of the seven forces were furious. Arrays were divided into 3 grades, heaven, earth, and mortal. Earth-grade array, even if it was an inferior earth-grade array, was enough to deal with the heaven and earth spiritual bridge and spiritual dwelling realm experts. Barbarians, you deserve to die. The top powers of the seven forces were furious and wanted to enter the barren ancient forbidden zone. After all, the top powers of the seven forces were gathered in the barren ancient fighting ring. If they were all killed by the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array, it would be a great loss to the seven forces. It might even cause a gap in the top powers of the generation and cause them to decline. Ho, do you want to violate the agreement? We have an agreement that the top powers of the 2 camps are not allowed to interfere with the battle in the barbarian tribe. Many top powers of the barbarian tribe stepped out to stop them. Tuoba Outyen took a few steps forward and blocked the path of the top powers of the seven forces as he said coldly. Barbarian tribe, are you trying to start an endless war? The Flame Emperor of the 3 imperial palaces shouted coldly. Zhou Tong and the young War Emperor were among them. This is a battle between the younger generation. If you want to interfere, we will not stand by and do nothing. Tuoba Outyen sneered. Most of the top powers of the barbarian tribe also took action and blocked the path of the top powers of the seven forces. Only Mirambo and the others sighed in their hearts. If this enmity were to be formed, it would truly be an irreconcilable enmity. The top powers of the seven forces had ugly expressions on their faces. With the top powers of the barbarian tribe blocking them, they could not help in time. Tuoba Shang had already activated the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array and they could not make it in time. All the sect leaders and elders of the seven forces had dark expressions on their faces. Compared to the anger of the top powers in the desolate ancient arena were in despair. This is an earth rank array. We can't escape and we can't fight back. Some of the top powers shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Are we going to die here today? Yan Wushuang's face turned pale. She was not afraid of death, but when death approached her, she could feel her heart trembling. Yi Guqin, I'm glad that you didn't come. Yan Wushuang smiled sadly. Zither Fairy, who had fainted, slowly woke up. When she saw the scene in front of her, she understood what had happened. Zither Fairy was not afraid of death, but it was a pity that she could not see him one last time. Zhou Tong's eyes flickered. He had once colluded with the barbarian tribe's saint and he was related to some of them. If he begged them, they might let him live. However, if he begged the barbarian tribe now, the image that Zhou Tong had created would be completely destroyed. On one side, it was a mask and an image. On the other side, it was his life. Zhou Tong's eyes showed a hint of struggle. However, when he felt the power of the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array increasing, Zhou Tong made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and stepped forward. Friends of the barbarian tribe, you don't have to be so ruthless. I haven't killed many of my fellow barbarian tribe members. As soon as he said that, the geniuses of the 7 major forces were all stunned. Chapter 518. even after the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array was activated. The geniuses of the 7 major forces only felt despair, but they didn't beg for mercy. Zhou Tong was the first. Zhou Tong actually begged for mercy, lowering his head to the barbarian race. How can he say such words? Most of the geniuses showed disdain in their eyes. They had acknowledged Zhou Tong's character before. But obviously, when Zhou Tong begged for mercy, all the positive images he had created had collapsed. Although he wasn't unpardonable, his image was completely destroyed. Zither Fairy's beautiful eyes looked at Zhou Tong with faint disgust. To think that when she found out that Zhou Tong was risking his life to save LV Qinghan, she felt a trace of guilt in her heart. But now, it seemed that Zhou Tong had really saved LV Qinghan. Zither Fairy wasn't stupid. Zhou Tong's current actions made people feel that his previous actions were extremely fake. Zhou Tong, you're one of the geniuses of the 7 major forces. How can you say such words? Yan Wushuang shouted, her eyes spitting fire. Indeed, she was afraid of death, but this didn't mean that she would lower her head to Tuoba Shang. Feeling the strange gazes around him, they were puzzled, disappointed, and doubtful. Zhou Tong's eyes were slightly gloomy. But he didn't regret it. I'm going to lose my life. Are you going to curse me in the underworld? Zhou Tong said coldly. He had already obtained the life and death intent. As long as he had enough time, he could refine it and become a life and death chamber expert. How could Zhou Tong be willing to die now? I think young Master Zhou is right. We don't have to fight to the death. Another person spoke. It was Rentingting of Consonance Palace. She came to Zhou Tong's side with an understanding smile on her face. Rentingting was doing this because she was afraid of death. Secondly, she wanted to curry favor with Zhou Tong. Miss Ren is indeed righteous. Zhou Tong smiled. With Rentingting's support, a small number of prodigies also gradually stood beside Zhou Tong, their faces alternating between green and white. Limitless Sword Sects Xian Feng, Xian Dai, and Murong Ditian. Saint Origin Academy's Princess Yuan Shi, Mo Lengia, and Fang Chen all stood with Zhou Tong and the others. Right now, the heavens' favorites of the 7 forces were divided into 2 factions. Those heavens' prides who did not join Zhou Tong's side were all furious. At this juncture of life and death, not only did they not band together to make a final resistance, but they also did not do so. Instead, it was his own internal strife that made the barbarian race a laughing stock. Watching Xian Feng, Xian Dai, and the others leave, Xian Hao frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything. The little war emperor of the 3 imperial palaces held the conqueror halberd and frowned. He seemed to be deep in thought. As for Saber Maniac Prime Sovereign, he was in a daze from start to finish, as if he didn't feel the impending doom. This scene made the elites of the 7 factions feel humiliated. Outside the ancient desolation forbidden zone, the experts of the barbarian tribe who saw this scene laughed and said, "There are indeed people with discerning eyes among the 7 forces. A wise man submits to circumstances." Although that was what he said, everyone could hear the mockery in his words. On the other hand, the Flame Emperor's face was extremely cold. Zhou Tong's action simply threw away all of the 3 imperial palaces' face. However, Zhou Tong was the disciple of Ling Huang. Even if the Flame Emperor was angry, there was nothing he could do. Now, the experts of the 7 factions could only watch helplessly. With the experts of the barbarian tribe around, there was no way they could rescue those heavens' prides in time. Moreover, Tuoba Shang was controlling the heavenly barbarian slaughtering spiritual array. If those experts were to enter the array, their cultivation would be suppressed and they would be killed. That would be a great loss. Sigh, I hope the heavens will protect us. Some of the experts of the 7 factions sighed. At the ancient desolation ring. Looking at Zhou Tong and the others who lowered their heads, the saints and saintesses of the barbarian tribe sneered. Only Lei Jilyo, Golden Sun Saint Sun, and the others looked at Zhou Tong with flickering eyes. Zhou Tong had actually contacted them privately. It was Zhou Tong who had contacted them during the battle in the valley. Therefore, if possible, Lei Jiuyo was willing to spare Zhou Tong and the others' lives. Tuo Bashang, a wise man, submits to circumstances. These people are quite sensible. It's not a bad idea to let them go. Lei Jiuyo stood out and said. Indeed. Golden Sun Saint Sun agreed. Hearing that, Tuo Bashang sneered. He knew that Zhou Tong was probably related to Lei Jiuyo and the others. Otherwise, Lei Jiuyo and the others would not have spoken up for him. In addition, Zhou Tong had never offended Tuo Bashang. Thus, Tuo Bashang could let them go. However, would it be so simple? Humph, since Lei Jiuyo and the rest have pleaded for you, it is not that I cannot let you off. You only need to do one thing for me. Kneel down and submit. Tuo Bashang held the arrayed disc in his hand and shouted coldly. Zhou Tong and the others' faces turned ugly. However, Zhou Tong gritted his teeth and half knelt down. Ren Tingting also knelt down in humiliation. Queen Yuanxi's face turned pale. She was the queen of a country and now she had to kneel down to the barbarian tribe. However, she did not think much of it and knelt down directly. Compared to her dignity, her life was more important. I, Yan Wushuang, do not want to be associated with you. Yan Wushuang's body trembled. The rest of the supreme talents were also cursing. You are the same as them. If you kneel down and surrender, I may spare your lives if I am in a good mood. Tuo Bashang sneered. He enjoyed the feeling of being in a commanding position and intimidating everyone. None of the other Sky Prides stepped forward. However, all of them looked as if they were ready to die. And you, 5-Crown King, if you kneel down and submit to me and give me the 5 primogenitor totems, I might spare your life. Tuo Bashang looked at Yi Guqin with a playful gaze. However, Yi Guqin did not seem to hear him and continued to play with the 5 elements sacred fruit in his hand. He knew that Tuo Bashang was joking. He and Tuo Bashang were already at an impasse. There was no way he would spare Tuo Bashang. Tuo Bashang's face turned cold when he saw Yi Guqin's indifferent attitude. Alright. 5-Crown King, I would like to see if you can withstand the attack of an Earth-grade array disc. Tuo Bashang raised the array disc and activated the power of the totems. With a loud boom, the surroundings of the ancient desolate arena trembled violently. The heavenly barbarian slaughtering array was fully activated. Along with the smell of gunpowder, there seemed to be barbarian shadows riding ancient beasts and wielding long spears emerging from the ground. They charged toward Yi Guqin and the other supreme talents who had yet to surrender. Those ancient barbarian shadows had extremely powerful auras. With a single charge, some of the Divine Soul Realm's supreme talents' bodies were torn apart. Blood splattered everywhere. Fight! Fight to the death! There were also unyielding supreme talents from the 7 major forces who roared at the top of their lungs. The Little War Emperor, Xian Hao, Gu Zun, Yan Wushuang, and the others all made their moves. Even so, how could they resist the power of an Earth-grade array disc? Even though the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array could only unleash 1/10 of its power under Tuo Bashang's control, it was still far from what these Divine Soul Realm supreme talents could resist. Bang! 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 One supreme talent after another exploded under the barbarian shadow's attacks. Not even a complete corpse was left. The scene was extremely tragic. The smell of blood filled the air. Yan Wushuang and the others were in a killing frenzy. Many inner yard disciples were also injured or killed. Zither Fairy's lips were stained with blood. She knew that she would not be able to escape this calamity. The atmosphere in the barren ancient arena was tragic. Outside the barren ancient forbidden zone, the 7 major forces were lifeless. Most of the barbarians had smug smiles on their faces. Tuo Baoyan couldn't help but smile. He wanted to see his son cut down Quintuple Crown King in a graceful manner. Yi Guqin and Tuo Bashang faced off in the barren ancient arena. Tuoba Shang was smug when he saw the death he had caused. He looked at Yi Guchen again and said with a cold smile, "Five-Crown King, are you ready to die?" Yi Guchen chuckled and didn't say anything. He slowly turned around with one hand behind his back and the other holding the 5 elements sacred fruit. "Are you resigned to your fate?" Tuoba Shang sneered when he saw Yi Guchen's posture. "Sorry, you can't take my life." Yi Guchen took off a corner of his mask and swallowed the 5 elements sacred fruit. In an instant, an incomparably violent sacred medicine power exploded like a bomb. At the same time, an extremely vast spiritual energy spread wildly in Yi Guchen's body. The powerful energy that had been dormant in Yi Guchen's body for a long time finally showed its edge with the help of the sacred medicine. It was the 6 paths Ashura sword array. Chapter 5:19. Yi Guchen had many trump cards up his sleeve throughout his cultivation journey. 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Reincarnation Sword Lotus, Pathos of Heaven, and so on were all extremely powerful moves. But apart from that, there was another trump card in Yi Guchen's body. It was a trump card that even Yi Guchen himself did not have the ability to use. It was the 6 paths Azura sword formation that Yi Guchen had obtained in the 18 blood prison. At that time, Yi Guchen had absorbed the 6 paths Azura sword formation into his body while comprehending the Azura sword intent. But the 6 paths Azura sword formation was an earth-grade formation that could condense the formation spirit. With Yi Guchen's Qi refinement realm cultivation at that time, he could not use this formation at all. Even with Yi Guchen's divine soul realm cultivation, he could not use it either. Because an earth-grade formation was a terrifying formation that could threaten the heaven and earth spiritual bridge and even divine dwelling realm experts. If Yi Guchen wanted to take the initiative to use the earth-grade formation, it was no different from an ant pulling a millstone. He could not do it at all. But it was different now. Because Yi Guchen had consumed the 5 elements sacred fruit. This was a genuine panacea. Not to mention the Saint Origin dynasty, even in the entire South Horizon region, sacred medicine was rare and not everyone could have it. And the sacred medicine's enormous medicinal power was also extremely vigorous, far surpassing that of a quasi-sacred medicine. Even the quasi-sacred pills that Yi Guchen had consumed in the past were far inferior to the current sacred medicine. One could imagine how vigorous the spiritual qi would be if such a powerful sacred medicine was directly swallowed into one's body without any preparation or preparation. This vigorous spiritual qi was the biggest driving force behind the 6 paths Azura sword formation. Yi Guchen felt the extremely abundant spiritual qi in his body that was about to explode and could not help but let out a long howl. A howl moved the wind and clouds. Tuoba Shang was stunned. Mu Lanhua, Long Nu, Lei Jilyo, and the rest of the barbarian race saints and saintesses were all stunned. 5-Crown King had actually directly swallowed a saint medicine. Everyone was in awe. Even the heavens' favorites from the 7 controlling forces were a little shocked. Sacred medicine was not something that could be casually consumed. If it was not properly refined, it would be no different from poison. That was because the unrefined power of the saint medicine was not something an ordinary person could withstand. As the saying goes, going too far is as bad as falling short. Ha, 5-Crown King, you're really desperate. You actually dared to consume the sacred medicine. Tuoba Shang laughed and shook his head, his eyes filled with mockery. He even felt that he didn't even need to make a move. 5-Crown King wouldn't be able to withstand it and self-destruct. Not only him, but even Lei Jilyo, the Golden Sun Saint's son, and the others thought the same. Ai, 5-Crown King, you were too reckless. Mu Lanhua sighed deeply, her beautiful eyes filled with regret. He had thought that someone who could contend with Tuoba Shang had finally appeared. Yet now, he had made such a foolish decision. Without even needing Tuoba Shang to do anything, he had already fallen into danger. At that moment, Yi Guchen's expression was solemn. The moment Yiguchen swallowed the 5 elemental sacred fruit, he felt an extremely powerful and terrifying spirit chi erupt from his body. It contained a dense 5 elemental mystic power. An ordinary divine soul realm cultivator would definitely not be able to withstand this terrifying spirit chi. However, how could Yiguchen's physical body be compared to an ordinary person's? His perfect physical body, flawless diamond body, 5 ancestor totems, and his current ancient god body. Yiguchen's physical body could be said to be invincible in the same cultivation level. 5 ancestor totems, out. Yiguchen rotated the 5 ancestor totems in his body and refined the 5 elemental mystic power in the 5 elemental sacred fruit. He used the 5 elemental mystic power to expel the remaining blood-dissolving demonic poison from his body. At the same time, Yiguchen channeled most of the remaining spirit chi into the 6 paths Azura sword formation in the depths of his body. In an instant, the 6 paths Azura sword formation that had been dormant in Yiguchen's body started to vibrate as if it had been ignited. On the surface of Yiguchen's body, blood-red lines began to spread gradually. These patterns were the 6 paths Azura sword formation's array patterns. These blood-red array patterns followed Yiguchen's body and spread to the ground. In an instant, a terrifying aura erupted from Yiguchen's body. Everyone stared blankly at Yiguchen. They could still feel an extremely powerful spirit chi erupting from 5 Crown King's body. They even thought that 5 Crown King's body would not be able to withstand the sacred medicine's terrifying power. But now, what was erupting from Yiguchen's body was not the sacred medicine's power. It was the power of an array. 6 paths Azura sword formation, out. Yiguchen let out a long and hoarse howl, as if he was an Azura from the 9 hells. An incomparably terrifying murderous aura erupted from Yiguchen's body. At this moment, Tuoba Shang couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Yiguchen's body slowly rose into the air. He wasn't borrowing the power of the vermilion bird's wings to rise into the air. Instead, countless complicated blood-red array patterns spread out from beneath his feet. The complexity of the array was no less than the heavenly savage slaughtering array here. Those are array patterns. Mulanue covered her mouth with her slender hand. Her beautiful eyes widened as she stared at the endless array patterns spreading beneath Yiguchen's feet. This aura, it's an earth-grade array. The Dragon Lady was also inexplicably shocked. On the side of the 7 factions, Yan Wushuang and the others were even more shocked. They looked at 5 Crown King, who was slowly rising into the air and covered in array patterns beneath his feet. Yan Wushuang's heart trembled violently. There's an earth-grade array imprinted in 5 Crown King's body. At this moment, Yan Wushuang wasn't the only one who was shocked. Whether it was the 7 factions or the barbarian race, everyone was speechless. At this moment, Yiguchen was wearing the blood-red sky demon general armor and standing on the 6 paths Azura sword formation. He was like a god of death that had emerged from the underworld. He had the power to control life and death. I control the 6 paths, Azura blood. Yiguchen stomped his foot on the blood-red array. In an instant, 100 blood-red flying swords appeared from the array and rose into the air. Each flying sword could instantly kill a divine soul realm prodigy. And this was only an incomplete power. Because even with the help of the sacred medicine, Yiguchen could only use a portion of the 6 paths Azura sword formation's power. However, it was definitely enough to deal with the current situation. Kill. After Yiguchen finished speaking, he used his finger as a sword and pointed at the air. The 100 flying swords seemed to be pulled by something as they broke through the air, splitting the sky and shaking the earth. The flying swords collided with the ancient barbarian race's shadow that had appeared from the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array. The remaining heavens prides of the 7 forces huddled together, feeling lucky to have survived a disaster. This is impossible. How could you have an earth-rank array in your body? Tuoba Shang kept retreating, unable to hide the ferocious look on his face. I, Tuoba Shang, will not accept this. Tuoba Shang let out a long howl and poured all of his power into the formation plate with all of his might. In an instant, the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array operated even more crazily, and a ferocious aura spread out. Again. Tuoba Shang's eyes were blood-red. He hit his chest with his other hand. He spat out a mouthful of blood essence on the array disc. Roar! The array disc trembled violently. Then, on the ground, a vast amount of ancient barbarian race's shadow appeared. In the end, it turned into a ferocious and terrifying giant beast that was as big as an ancient mountain. Oh no, it's the array spirit of the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array. Yen Wushuang and the others were shocked. The array spirit was the core of an earth-rank array. Although the array spirit that Tuoba Shang had summoned with all his might was only a shadow and was very weak, it was still the array spirit. No one present could withstand the array spirit's attack. Oh, the array spirit! Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. At that moment, his physical body was also suffering a great impact. After all, it was an earth-rank array. If it were an ordinary person, their physical body would have collapsed long ago. Yi Guqin's eyes were also filled with determination. So what if it's the array spirit? As soon as Yi Guqin finished speaking, he channeled all the power of the sacred medicine into the sword array. In an instant, the 100 flying swords gathered together, accompanied by a thick blood-red light. A ferocious figure that looked like an Asura appeared. Chapter 520. That blood-red figure looked similar to Yi Guqin, who was wearing the Sky Demon General armor. His body was covered in blood-red armor, but his face was as ferocious as an Asura demon. A terrifying murderous aura, and bloodthirsty aura were emitted from the figure. It was the spirit of the Six Paths Asura sword formation, the Asura demon spirit. I am the Asura demon spirit. Anyone under the Six Paths Asura will be killed without mercy. The Asura demon spirit slowly spoke in a hoarse voice that seemed to have come from the depths of hell. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. The power of the Asura demon spirit was not something they could fight against. Tuoba Shang was completely speechless. His eyelids twitched, and the veins on his temples throbbed. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. Yi Guqin seemed to be Tuoba Shang's nemesis. No matter what Tuoba Shang did, Yi Guqin was able to restrain him. Even now, Tuoba Shang had used the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array with great difficulty. In the end, Yi Guqin immediately used the Six Paths Asura sword formation. Tuoba Shang was filled with hatred. He was filled with hatred. Since there was the Five-Crown King, why was there a need for Tuoba Shang? Five-Crown King, you must die today. The murderous intent in Tuoba Shang's heart seemed to have solidified. As he controlled the formation plate, the terrifying giant beast, which was the formation spirit of the heavenly barbarian slaughtering formation, let out a long roar that shook the mountains and rivers as it charged toward Yi Guqin. Asura demon spirit, kill! Yi Guqin shouted coldly. The Asura demon spirit's murderous aura exploded. He reached out a hand and clenched it. The 108 blood-red flying swords gathered in his hand and formed a blood-red longsword covered with demonic runes. The Asura demon spirit held the blood-red longsword and collided with the heavenly barbarian beast. The entire ground seemed to tremble from the collision, and endless cracks spread out. The aura of heaven and earth was chaotic, and the ripples were shocking. All the sky prides paled slightly as they watched the two array spirits battle. It could be said that any spirit of the formation could easily defeat everyone here. At the same time, the two spirit arrays collided. Outside the forbidden zone of ancient desolation, the experts of the barbarian race were stunned. The joy on their faces seemed to have frozen. The joy on Tuoba Outyen's face completely froze. That Five-Crown King actually possessed this sort of ability. All the experts of the barbarian race were startled and frowned. This Five-Crown King is a berserker, but he's helping the people from the seven great forces of power. I don't think so. It's probably because of the grudge between Five Crown King and Tuoba Shang. Didn't you see that Tuoba Shang wanted to kill him? Some people from the barbarian race began to discuss among themselves. Tuoba Outyen's expression was extremely gloomy. Melambo breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, but he couldn't help but think even more highly of this mysterious quintuple crown king. An earth-rank array formation was not something that anyone could possess. On the other hand, the 7 major forces felt like they had just survived a disaster. Many people breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. How shameful. The sky prides of the 7 major forces actually needed the barbarian race's 5 crown king to save them in the end. Some experts blushed with shame. Inside the ancient desolate arena, the 2 spirit arrays continued to battle, their auras shocking. However, one thing was for sure. The Azura demon spirit was definitely not weaker than the sky barbarian beast. The sky prides of the 7 major forces were slightly nervous, but more of them breathed a sigh of relief. Zhou Tong, Ren Tingting, and the others' expressions were extremely ugly. Damn it. If 5 Crown King had a countermeasure, why didn't he use it earlier? Zhou Tong secretly gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Extreme anger and unwillingness rose in his heart. If Yiguchen had used the Earth Rank Array formation earlier, Zhou Tong naturally wouldn't have to kneel and lose face. But now, as soon as they knelt, Yiguchen used a countermeasure. This made Zhou Tong so angry that he felt like vomiting blood. He looked at Yiguchen with a gloomy gaze. While the 2 spirit arrays were fighting, Yiguchen didn't stay idle. This was because he knew that the array disk was the source of everything. As long as the array disk was destroyed, the Sky Barbarian Spiritual Slaughtering Array would naturally disperse. Yiguchen's eyes shot out a cold light. He no longer held back and directly took out the Blood Hell Sword. A ferocious sword with torrential vermilion bird flames swept towards Tuoba Shang. This sword was supported by the Fire Sword Intent and was extremely powerful. Tuoba Shang's expression changed slightly. He also took out the 4-beast golden body again. The 4 totem spirits circled around him and turned into a wheel to resist Yiguchen's attack. However, Yiguchen had swallowed the 5 elements sacred fruit at this moment. His understanding of the 5 elements had deepened. In addition to Yiguchen's illuminated sword heart, this was the best opportunity to comprehend the sword intent. I'll use you as a whetstone to comprehend the sword intent. Yiguchen held the Blood Hell Sword and charged forward. His sword aura was sometimes as explosive as fire and sometimes as gentle as water. It was sometimes as sharp as metal and sometimes as heavy as the earth. This is the sword intent. Tuoba Shang resisted with all his might and released the power of the 4 totem spirits to the maximum. However, Yiguchen also took out the 5 primogenitor totems. The suppressive aura immediately weakened Tuoba Shang's totem power by 40 to 50%. Gentle like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete. However, when it is angry, it can also sweep across the world like raging waves. Yiguchen had a kind of understanding in his heart. He took out his sword aura again. It was no longer peaceful water. Instead, it was a terrifying and ferocious sword aura. He had completely comprehended the water sword intent. Yiguchen's eyes shone brightly. The more he attacked, the deeper his understanding of the sword intent. Before long, Yiguchen's sword aura was once again as heavy as the earth. It was like an absolute defense that could not be broken. The earth bears the weight of all things. Endure and remain motionless. Defense is paramount. A thick and profound sword intent spread out from Yiguchen's sword aura. He had completely comprehended the earth sword intent. Everyone present was dumbstruck. They stared blankly at the profound sword intent that surged out. The shock in their hearts could not be any greater. 5 Crown King had actually started to comprehend the sword intent at the last minute. Moreover, he had comprehended it so quickly. So powerful. Even if it is an ordinary sword intent, he can comprehend it so quickly. He is definitely a sword Dao genius. Indeed. Even if the sword sect's Yiguchen was here, he would not be able to compare to Five Crown King. Many prodigies sighed. Yan Wushuang also stared at Five Crown King with her beautiful eyes. He actually comprehended 2 sword intents consecutively. Even a sword Dao genius like Yiguchen would not be able to do so. Just who is this Five Crown King? Yan Wushuang wondered secretly. Just as the people from the 7 major forces were shocked, Yiguchen had already comprehended the metal sword intent again. He had comprehended it so quickly. First, it was naturally because of the illuminated sword heart and the sword demon's sword Dao talent. Second, it was because he had awakened the 5 ancestral totems. Yiguchen had a very deep understanding of the 5 elements. Third, it was because of the 5 elements sacred fruit. The 5 elements sacred fruit's effects were not just boundless spirit qi. It also contained the mystic power of the 5 elements and the Tao of the 5 elements. Yiguchen was able to comprehend the ordinary sword intent so quickly because of all these enhancements. Next, Yiguchen's sword moves changed again. They were continuous and unrestrained, as if they were endless. This was the life force of the wood sword intent. The moment Yiguchen fully comprehended the wood sword intent, his entire body erupted with an unparalleled 5-colored divine light. He had completely comprehended the 5 sword intents. His battle strength skyrocketed again. He slashed his sword toward Tuoba Shang, carrying the power of the 5 sword intents. This incomparably arrogant and overbearing 4-crown king finally revealed a trace of panic on his face. Chapter 521. It was no wonder that Tuoba Shang's expression changed. That was because Yiguchen's aura was too powerful. The 5 ancestor totems covered the area. The 5 sword essences were invincible. He was like the brightest star. The moment he was born, he outshone all the other heaven's favorites. In the eyes of the people from the 7 superpowers, this 5-crown king's talent in the way of the sword even surpassed that of Yiguchen of the sword sect. After all, Quintuple Crown King had comprehended 4 sword essences in front of everyone. In addition to the fire sword essence that he had already comprehended, he now had 5 sword essences. Although it was just 5 ordinary sword essences, it was still extremely shocking. Tuoba Shang, your threat is not worth mentioning in my eyes. Yiguchen's tone was indifferent. Previously, Tuoba Shang had said that he would definitely kill him today. But what about the current situation? Tuoba Shang's eyes were filled with anger when he heard that. His chest heaved up and down as he was so angry that his organs were burning. However, he had to admit that he could do nothing to Yiguchen. Kill. Yiguchen did not say anything and released the 5 sword essences at the same time. Although Yiguchen did not comprehend the 5 sword essences directly and the 5 sword essences were not connected, their power was absolutely shocking and it was enough to sweep the area. Metal sword essence, destroy heaven and earth. Wood sword essence, grow and multiply. Water sword essence, wild wolf raging waves. Fire sword essence, burn everything. Earth sword essence, absolute defense. Even though Yiguchen did not use any sword moves, the 5 sword essences alone were not something that anyone could block. Tuoba Shang tried his best to activate the 4 totems and the power of the 4 totems gathered together to form 4 wheels in front of him. Yiguchen's eyes were cold as he activated the edge-splitting array on the bloody hell sword. The divine weapon, which was already extremely powerful to begin with, was now emitting a sharp sword chi that seemed to be able to cut through everything. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Tuoba Shang's body was pushed back again and a bloody hole appeared on his shoulder. Yiguchen's eyes flashed. He did not give Tuoba Shang a chance to attack again. Why are you still standing there? Tuoba Shang gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaotian, and the rest did not hesitate and struck at the same time. In this kind of situation, who would still want to have a fair duel? 5-crown king swept through the place. If it was one-on-one, it was likely that no one would be able to contend against him. Let's go as well and help 5-crown king. Yan Wushuang shouted. She had never thought that one day, she would actually help the barbarians. But now, under the suppression of the heavenly barbaric spiritual slaughtering array, only the 5-crown king was their savior. Hearing this, Xian Hao, the young combat emperor, and the others hesitated. Prime Sovereign Saber Addict raised his brows slightly. However, without much hesitation, they also directly attacked. Although Gu Zun and the others were outstanding talents, not everyone could withstand an Earth-grade array formation. If something happened to 5-crown king, their fates would definitely not be any better. As Gu Zun and the others made their moves, another battle broke out around the desolate ancient arena. The geniuses of the two factions clashed once again. As for Zhou Tong, Ren Tingting, and the others, they silently retreated to the back. Zhou Tong hated 5-crown king to the core and would naturally not attack. Ren Tingting and the others followed Zhou Tong's lead, so they would not attack either. Humph, they actually helped the barbarian race's 5-crown king. Are they crazy? Ren Tingting snorted coldly, appearing rather disdainful. However, she had never thought of that. If 5-crown king had not used an Earth-grade array to resist the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array, she would have died. She still had the time to gossip here. She would probably have lost her life. Fight, fight, it's best if you all die together. Zhou Tong's lips curled into a cold smile. To him, the best outcome was naturally for 5-crown king and Tuoba Shang to die together. However, reality was obviously not as good as Zhou Tong imagined. With the help of Yan Wushuang and the others, Yi Guqin was not surrounded by the barbarians. He did not stop attacking and charged towards Tuoba Shang. This was because Yi Guqin looked fine to outsiders, but his body was under a huge burden. After all, no matter how strong Yi Guqin's body was, he was only in the divine soul realm. Even with the help of the 5 elemental sacred fruit, he could not maintain an Earth-grade array at the divine soul realm for long. At this moment, Yi Guqin's body was already injured. The surface of his heavenly demon general armor was covered in cracks. This was Yi Guqin's ancient god form. If he was in his normal form, Yi Guqin's body would not be able to withstand it. If he was an ordinary prodigy, his body would have directly exploded. Let's end this quickly. Yi Guqin's mouth leaked blood. He could not hold on for long. Boom! Yi Guqin raised the blood hell sword and released 5 sword intents at the same time. 5 colored light shone in all directions. At the same time, the 5 primal totem spirits attacked Tuoba Shang together with the sword. Tuoba Shang roared, almost risking his life. He was also in a bad situation. The mad demon's secret skill had reached its limit. For symbols divine disc. The power of Tuoba Shang's 4 totem spirits gathered and turned into a 4-sided disc. It seemed to be able to crush everything as it collided with Yi Guqin. With a loud explosion, shocking air waves rippled in all directions. The ground trembled and endless cracks spread. Puff! Tuoba Shang's body flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Guqin also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his expression turned cold. He dashed toward Tuoba Shang and pointed his sword at the disc array. Oh no! Tuoba Shang's expression changed drastically. With a crack, the disc array was hit by the Blood Hell Sword. The Blood Hell Sword was a supreme-grade dermic inscription divine weapon. In addition to the splitting edge array, its sharpness was needless to say. As the sound rang out, the disc array directly shattered, turning into fragments that scattered in the air. Tuoba Shang's body kept retreating as if his soul had been sucked out. At the same time, the Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array and the Heavenly Barbarian Beast Array slowly dissipated. Yi Guqin spat out another mouthful of blood. His body's strength had reached its limit. The 6 Paths Ashura Sword Array and the Ashura Demon Spirit also dissipated. As the two Earthgrade arrays dissipated, the desolate ancient arena, which was originally filled with killing intent, regained its calm. On the barbarian tribe's side, most of their faces turned pale. Their plan to kill the prodigies of the 7 major factions had completely failed. Tuoba Shang was even more dazed. His face was filled with disbelief. We did it. Yan Wushuang and the other prodigies of the 7 major factions were pleasantly surprised. This calamity had been resolved by 5 Crown King. Yan Wushuang's eyes shone brightly as she stared at the blood-red figure standing on the arena. To be honest, other than Yan Changge and Feng Manlu, the only person Yan Wushuang admired was Ye Guqin. However, Ye Guqin had yet to appear. The one who had saved them was the barbarian tribe's 5 Crown King. This made Yan Wushuang feel complicated. However, Yan Wushuang knew that there was one more person of the opposite sex that she admired. Yan Wushuang wasn't the only one. The other prodigies also looked at the figure with complicated gazes. The sword sect, whom they had placed their hopes on, had yet to appear. Now, the barbarian tribe's 5 Crown King had indeed saved them. This was a very complicated feeling for these prodigies. Tuoba Shang was completely exhausted and had no strength to continue fighting. Just as the prodigies of the 7 major factions were hoping that the 5 Crown King could kill Tuoba Shang, Ye Guqin groaned and his body trembled. He almost fell to the ground. He used the Blood Hell sword to support his body and barely managed to stay upright. As expected, it's too difficult. Ye Guqin sighed inwardly. Not good. Looks like the 5 Crown King is also heavily injured. The prodigies of the 7 major factions paled. At this moment, a cold light flashed in Zhou Tong's eyes. He shouted, "Everyone, the 5 Crown King is a prodigy of the barbarian tribe. He will definitely be a threat to the 7 major factions in the future. If we don't kill him now, when will we?" As his words faded, the beautiful eyes of Ren Tingting and the others flickered as they stood beside Zhou Tong. The 5 Crown King who had just saved them was now being killed by them. How ironic. Chapter 522. Zhou Tong did not hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Although he did not know 5 Crown King's true identity, it did not hinder his murderous intent. Previously in the valley, it was this 5 Crown King who had ruined his plan. Now, he had only acted after Zhou Tong and the others had paid the price. Therefore, Zhou Tong saw 5 Crown King as a thorn in his side. Previously, Zhou Tong had not dared to act rashly due to 5 Crown King's strength. But now, seeing 5 Crown King's body trembling, he was clearly injured. How could Zhou Tong miss this opportunity? Zhou Tong, do you have any shame? Yan Wushuang's face was ashen. She had seen shameless people before, but she had never seen such a shameless person. One should know that 5 Crown King had protected all the geniuses of the 7 factions. Zhou Tong and the others had knelt because they were afraid of death. Otherwise, they would have been protected as well. However, the person who had protected the 7 factions was now being attacked by the 7 factions. Was there anything more ironic than this? Humph, we did not receive 5 Crown King's protection. Ren Tingting snorted. You mean to say that you feel honored to kneel? Yi Xia curled his lips and said disdainfully. You. Ren Tingting's face turned red, unable to refute. Princess Yuan Shi and the others also looked embarrassed. They were too ashamed to show their faces. Humph, why waste your breath? I, Zhou Tong, will eliminate this threat on behalf of the 7 factions today. Zhou Tong said coldly as he charged at Ye Guqin. At the same time, Ren Tingting and the others followed closely behind. How dare you? Yan Wushuang and the others shouted coldly and stepped forward to stop them. Ha, interesting. Let's go too. The eyes of Lei Jiuyo and the others flickered as they looked at Zhou Tong with a trace of disdain. However, this was exactly what they needed. Since the 7 factions were having internal strife, they could take the opportunity to kill 5 Crown King. Lei Jilyo did not hesitate as he had already formed a blood feud with 5 Crown King. However, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian and the others hesitated. After all, they did not have any deep grudges with 5 Crown King. Moreover, the consequences of attacking 5 Crown King rashly were unpredictable. As for Taba Shang, he was heavily injured at this moment, and he was unable to continue fighting since a long time ago. He was utterly unable to make a move against Yiguchen. When Yiguchen saw this, his gaze turned cold. He was indeed not in a good state at the moment. The spiritual energy in his body was in disorder, and his physical body was injured. It was not suitable for him to continue fighting. Green Spirit Palm. Zhou Tong gathered the vital energy in his body and channeled it into his palm. A green palm print formed in front of him and pressed down on Yiguchen. As a prodigy of the Divine Soul 9 transformations, Zhou Tong's strength was beyond doubt. A cold light flashed in Yiguchen's eyes. Even though he was injured, he wasn't an existence that Zhou Tong could provoke. The power of the 5 elements totem poured into the bloody hell sword. The sharp sword swept out and collided with Zhou Tong's palm. Puchi. Blood splattered everywhere. Zhou Tong's expression abruptly changed as he hurriedly retreated. A trace of blood had appeared on his palm. Fortunately, he had stopped in time. Otherwise, his entire palm would have been sliced off. On the other side, Yiguchen's figure also retreated several steps. Although he didn't seem to have any reaction on the surface, there was more blood at the corner of Yiguchen's mouth. This. Zhou Tong's expression was extremely grave. He realized that he couldn't even defeat the heavily injured 5 Crown King. This was undoubtedly a joke. I don't believe it. 5 Crown King must be injured right now. As long as I slowly wear him down, he will eventually run out of energy. Zhou Tong's eyes flashed as he prepared to attack again. As for Yan Wushuang and the others, they were tightly held back by Ren Tingting and the others. Just as Zhou Tong was about to attack again, a loud and clear cry rang out nearby. Immediately, an incomparably blazing flame shot directly at Zhou Tong. Who? Zhou Tong's expression changed as he was caught off guard. Vital energy surged out of his body in an attempt to isolate this flame. However, Zhou Tong shockingly discovered that this blazing flame actually seemed to be able to burn even true qi. Ah! Zhou Tong screamed as he retreated in a sorry state. His clothes were burned in many places and his skin was charred black. Seeing this, Yiguchen's eyes flashed slightly as he released the vermilion bird wings on his back. He directly soared into the air and flew into the distance. Damn it! Zhou Tong barely managed to extinguish the flames as he watched Yiguchen fly into the distance with an extremely dark expression. On the other side, Tuoba Shang was also staring at Yiguchen's departing figure. His teeth were clenched so tightly that they were about to make cracking sounds. Today's matter was an unerasable humiliation to Tuoba Shang. With Yiguchen's departure, the entire desolate ancient arena fell silent. On the barbarian tribe's side, their leader, Tuoba Shang, was heavily injured and their formation plate was destroyed. They had lost all their advantages. The 7 factions didn't have it easy either. Although Yiguchen had sent out the 6 Paths Azura sword formation in time, there were still many casualties in a short period of time. Fortunately, some of the top heaven prides didn't die. Otherwise, the losses would be even greater. Barbarian tribe, we will remember this. Yan Wushuang and the other top heaven prides stared coldly at the barbarian tribe. If you still want to fight, we will keep you company. Lei Jilyo, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian and the others said strongly. However, both sides had suffered heavy losses and knew that it wasn't good to continue fighting. Although both camps were unwilling, they could only stop fighting for the time being and retreat. As for what kind of battle would erupt in the future, it wasn't something that the heaven prides could control. It was something that the divine dwelling experts had to consider. After that, the heaven prides of both sides retreated. Zhou Tong's face was solemn as he thought to himself, when I break through to the life and death threshold with the help of the life and death intent, both Yiguchen and Five Crown King will be trampled under my feet. Not only Zhou Tong, but many other heaven prides had also obtained the life and death intent. It could be said that although the desolate ancient arena battle was tragic, the surviving heaven prides had also gained a lot. One could imagine that it wouldn't be long before these heaven prides who had obtained the life and death intent broke through and became experts at the life and death threshold. There would be a large gap between them and ordinary heaven prides. Many heaven prides rejoiced. Only Yan Wushuang and the others in the Sword Sect's Tower Association weren't in a good mood. This was because Yiguchen, the benchmark of the Sword Sect's Tower Association, hadn't appeared from beginning to end. 100 miles away from the desolate ancient arena, Yiguchen, who was flying in the air, landed with a loud thud. The heavenly demon general armor on his body disappeared, revealing his original appearance. Yiguchen's body was covered in open wounds from which blood flowed out. The spirit chi in his body was also extremely chaotic. The effects of the sacred elixir were extremely powerful. Even after receiving a portion of the Six Paths Azura sword formation, a large portion of the sacred elixir's power was still stored in Yiguchen's body. Brother Condor, thank you for your help. Yiguchen looked at the little red bird beside him and said. Don't mention it. Grandpa Condor also doesn't like that bastard. You should heal your wounds first. The one who spat out the flames was naturally the divine Condor. Yiguchen nodded slightly and sat on the ground to heal himself. Although consuming the 5 elemental sacred fruit was a huge risk, the harvest was not small. The blood-dissolving demonic poison had been removed, and the 5 sword intents had been completely comprehended. All in all, it was worth it. Yiguchen took out a healing elixir and consumed it to heal the chaotic chi and blood in his body. After 3 days, Yiguchen finally recovered some of his primordial chi. After cultivating the ancient god tactics, Yiguchen's physical body's recovery ability had greatly increased. His injuries could slowly heal over time. At the same time, a large portion of the 5 elements sacred fruit's power was still in his body. When Yiguchen broke through, the sacred elixir's power would be of great help. It's about time. Next, I'll head to the barbarian tribe's 5 elements temple. I wonder if there are any opportunities there that can help me break through to 1-star ancient god? Of course, the most important thing is to obtain the sacred elixir. Su Jianshi, wait for me. And Zhou Tong and the Shinto family. When I return from the barbarian tribe, it will be the time of your deaths. Yiguchen's thoughts ran wild as he looked into the distance. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.